Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV live on YouTube. It's been far too long. There was just so much news. I felt like last week, every day I had another video idea. But I feel like it's this is like the calm before the storm. It's right before we're probably about to get another big announcement or hopefully some EPA documents. A delivery event date would be nice. We actually got Ming-Chi Kuo even talking about Cybertruck recently, which was weird. I wasn't expecting that to happen. He's usually for those who don't know, I run a tech channel as well where we talk more about Apple products. And Ming Chi Kuo is usually the one talking iPhone leaks, and now he was talking Cybertruck leaks. So just worlds colliding for me. But anyway, because it's a longer video, I thought it would be fun to showcase. Tesla live streamed this to X, of course, or Twitter, as the superior live streaming platform that doesn't support 1080p. But either way, they were probably live streaming off of Starlink. So the video you see in the corner here, you can also, on YouTube, where I am streaming right now, you can actually pinch to zoom in if you want to see more of one particular part of the stream, take up more of the screen. Sorry, it's just another YouTube perk I thought I'd mention. But this is a live stream they did of Cybertruck driving through Baja California in Mexico. Yes, California in Mexico. It's confusing, I know, but it was pretty cool, even if it was somewhat of a pixelated, quiet on the details live stream here. It was something I thought we should talk about, the fact that there were not one but two Cybertrucks with these custom. I don't even know if wrap is the right term. I'm not even sure if it was a wrap. Probably more of a vinyl sticker, but I used it for the thumbnail. Link in the description to, of course, the person who's able to catch this. This was spotted in Mexico. But yeah, they have it's a release candidate build, obviously, with this really cool graffiti artwork plastered along the side, and Starlink Mobile bolted to the roof of the Cybertruck, which was really cool. Actually, one Cybertruck had two separate Starlink mobile antennas, and the other one just had one. But yeah, you can see close up in detail kind of what the Cybertruck looks like in motion. The little blind spot in the front corner, that windshield really sticks out. Pretty much the largest dashboard I've ever seen. It's kind of insane. And then they just put the iPad on the dashboard. I couldn't even tell if someone was holding it. It doesn't look like someone's holding it. Maybe that's an attestament to how great the suspension is. But yeah, the Cybertrucks, along with some help, they had a little Dodge Ram pickup towing things behind them, spare tires because they did blow a few on the trip, as well as gas generators, which was kind of ironic. So there's not as many superchargers, obviously, in Mexico, which, from what I've gathered, I haven't done a ton of research on the charging infrastructure in Mexico, but from what I understand, it's kind of all over the place. Like, yes, they have some superchargers that are NACS, but I think they have some DC fast chargers that are CCS1, and they even have some GBT, not to be confused with GPT, but they have some GBT not super, DC fast chargers in Mexico, which is actually the charge connector they use in like China and Asia. So it's all over the place, although, yes, technically Mexico is in North America. So my hope is that with Giga Mexico coming up and more vehicles being available in that market, obviously most people aren't spending as much money as they do in the United States or Canada, so it probably won't grow as quickly. But I'm hoping that we can standardize the North America charging standard in North America. That would make a lot of sense. It's not just the United States charging standard, of course. But yeah, it was fun. I watched pretty much the whole live stream. I thought it'd be fun to have in the background. There wasn't really any insightful news surrounding it, which is why I thought, okay, this is a cool thing to talk about on a live stream. Not necessarily needed a designated video, but it's just kind of fun to see how the Cybertruck handles turns, seeing them test it, seeing them drive it so much off road. Um, Seeing how the brake lights respond in different environments. They kind of switch to these squares in a bar like that, and then back to a line, kind of back and forth. Honestly, kind of intricate for a brake light system for Tesla, at least. I know there's way more intricate lighting systems out there, but I thought it was kind of cool. Um, Hi, Ivan. Thanks for tuning in. It was cool to see the Cybertrucks assisting the Toyota and Ram trucks through Baja. Yeah, I think it was more the other way around personally, but yeah, if there wasn't as many superchargers in Mexico, so they did a lot of their stops with destination chargers at hotels. And if they didn't have destination charging, they would use gas generators to charge the Cybertruck. Not a great look. I'm not exactly sure why they're promoting this, considering how like guerrilla filmmaking it is, just like whipping out the phone and starting a live stream on a platform that is basically the worst at live streaming. Hate to be so hard on you, Twitter, because I'm rooting for you and I want you to succeed, but I'm sorry, the live streaming settings of Twitter are pretty awful. Um, we see Joe Tegmeyer posted the Cybertruck castings at Austin. I did, yes, we can look at those if you want to. I didn't see anything really to gather from there other than the fact that there were a lot of them. See, the annoying thing is I'm worried I'm going to close this player if I bring it up, but okay, no, maybe it keeps playing. Does it keep playing? Okay, that's good. Thank you, Twitter. You did something right. Um, oh, but I can't play two things at once, so we'll just have to look at the pictures here. Um, let me zoom in. Yes, this is October 9th. These are all front Cybertruck castings. The only news I can gather from this is that it feels like those gigapresses are freaking working. That's a good sign that there's so many of these things all stacked up. Um, Ming Chi Kuo is the one who actually said Cybertruck deliveries should start at the end of this year at the earliest, which I guess in his head means there's a chance these may be delayed. I'm still pretty convinced they've already internally started deliveries because there's actually been a lot of Cybertruck sightings uh, at people's houses, or a lot of people are clearly just using them casually. There's a lot of Cybertrucks that are being spotted, some without manufacturer plates, which is kind of interesting. It points to the idea that some Cybertrucks are not necessarily prototypes, they're just kind of done, and maybe certain executives higher ups at Tesla are able to just use them and drive them around. Probably a good idea to find all the bugs and try to iron out all the kinks, figure out what's wrong with it early up. Um, so they're definitely fine tuning the casting press here, which is a good sign. It's again, but it's not the meat. It's not like the nitty-gritty details we're all hoping for, right? We all want there to be more specs. We want pricing, we want delivery dates, we want more concrete timelines. And particularly because of what happened last week with the whole Cybertruck user interface leaking out. This is precisely why I think Tesla should get ahead of these leaks. And like, it's cool that they want to live stream themselves driving around Baja, but the quality sucks. They're not going into much detail. They're just kind of just being all vague about it. Like, okay, I'm in the truck, but don't show the screen or anything. Just point at this iPad, and it's all pixelated, so you can't really get any real details on the ground clearance and suspension. And so everything is just being so vague. And what happens when Tesla is moving around so many Cybertrucks like this, and apparently, relying on independent contractors to move the Cybertruck around, and that results in apparently the story surrounding the leaked user interface that I did last week is that a pedestrian was just kind of walking by and was testing the Cybertrucks on the trailer and found that one of the Cybertrucks was unlocked. So a random passerby was able to open up the door, get on the inside, film all those close-ups, film the user interface, which we hadn't seen in detail yet, and kind of reveal a lot of updates and a lot of designs that, in my opinion, these should not be leaking. Like, this should not be something that some random stranger finds with a smartphone on an independent contractor's trailer. This is the kind of thing that is inevitable to be leaked if you're transporting so many Cybertrucks all over the place. So, in my head, the best course of action is get ahead of those. You want to announce these things in a more official, more certified way, rather than have them all leaked out the sides like they are right now, where just kind of random people kind of stumble into them. But yeah, Joe Tegmeyer caught a great video of all the Cybertruck front castings. There's a heck of a ton of them, and we've also been seeing lots of Cybertrucks outside the factory that are crash tested. So still no idea on how it's performing in those crash tests because Tesla doesn't want to say anything, but we know that it has been crash tested. Um, if you look at where they are in Baja, they are far apart and just level 2. They did a tow generator with the support vehicles, though. Yes, they had to use multiple different charging options, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's still cool to see progress being made. It's cool to see how frequently they're being spotted, of course. Um, people taking motorcycles. I'm also hoping that we get some more V4 superchargers. that are actually online, and hopefully someone can get up close to them and take a picture of the cabinet so that we know if these new V4 superchargers showing up in the US, do they actually support higher voltages, or are they just upgraded dispensers and the cabinets are the same as a V3, in which case it's still a win in my book. It's just mostly beneficial to CCS owners, not a big deal for Tesla customers, because if the cabinets didn't change on the back end, then it's basically exactly the same as a V4 supercharger. The only advantage is that CCS customers should be able to plug in without occupying an additional stall. Um, they apparently did it all on Destiny. Yeah, I think so. How soon after we get EPA range estimates would Cybertruck be delivered? So I don't think there is a straight answer. I don't think it's like immediate dependent. All there is here's how it worked previously. It might work differently, but all I can remember was the 4680 Model Y when that was first tested by the EPA and we saw the new filing show up on fueleconomy.gov. There was I want to say like a month after that EPA filing, they did the Cyber Rodeo event, which is where first deliveries began, but that was just to employees. It was not actually to customers. Customers didn't get it until another 2 or 3 months after that. So that's why I'm trying to remind everybody that there could be a whole Cybertruck delivery event without there actually being customer deliveries. They could just be delivering it to more and more waves of the Cybertruck, the Tesla employees. Right now, I think they probably already have delivered a few to the higher up executives. And then at the delivery event, they'll open it up to, more factory workers, like more people that aren't necessarily executives, and then it could be several months after that before an actual customer gets one. There may be letting certain media people get access to the Cybertruck earlier, but Tesla's constantly changing things. I should mention there's not like a set rule book that they have to always follow. There's a very real chance that they could do a totally different thing. They might um, it's weird is they made their own official Cybertruck Twitter account that's verified and official and everything. It's retweeted that live stream we saw, and its first tweet was just the little polygon, the triangle emoji. But that's about it. There's no description. It follows Elon and Tesla. That's the only accounts it's following. It's very weird. It's very vague. Everything about it is super vague, super mysterious. I don't know if that's a strategy or just um, pure negligence, but I think they should get ahead of this. I think, they should update the website with more recent Cybertruck photos. If the range isn't going to be what we want it to be, it's better for us to get it over with now. Tell us. Just let us know what the pricing you're targeting is. Let us know the range. Let us know the 0 to 60, the towing capacity, because everybody is still obsessed and focused on the unveiling specs, which we're pretty confident are no longer being honored. Is it like the iPhone 4 event where it was leaked months before? Yeah, but the iPhone 4 was like a year after iPhone 3. The Cybertruck was unveiled in 2019. There's been such a wide gap, and they're already late as is, and they're already driving around, and people are walking in them, finding them unlocked, and taking pictures. So at this point, I say just get ahead of it. Just announce everything you can, and we'll just accept that maybe deliveries are going to take a bit longer. But as long as we know all the range and specs and the software and all the updates and stuff, I think people will get their expectations in check rather than speculate, wonder, vague tweet there, vague post there. It's just weird. It's like they're leaking their own stuff here. He's live streaming from inside the Cybertruck, which is quite funny. Um, for a while, when I was first watching this, I thought they were following the other Cybertruck in a Model Y. And I was like, man, well, if the Cybertruck's doing good in Baja, then I'm even more impressed by the camera car. The Model Y is doing fantastic. Um, I only got one question from a channel member before we continue. I forgot last time. I apologize. I think it was Jackson too. But he's basically concerned. I already read the comment, but basically he's concerned about build quality because his uncle is interested or is asking questions about getting an EV, I should say. And Jackson Smith, one of our channel supporters of 4 months now, thank you very much, is trying to get him on board with either a Model 3 or Y, but he's thinking I should wait for the refresh. But he's worried about reliability issues because, when a factory gets shut down and is first ramping up, there tends to be more build quality problems? Should he, and he's asking, do I think there will be quality control issues when they first refresh it? How long will it take for them to be fixed? Which is a decent question, but I don't think there's a great answer to, if I'm honest. Um, because personally, I don't think there's I don't think there's a great way to time all this stuff. I think is there a way I can pop that out? There we go. Cool. I don't think there's like a okay, if you get one right now, it's gonna have build quality issues, but if you wait until this time, you won't have build quality issues. Honestly, like I got my Model 3 in the middle of a high volume production ramp. Like it was not after a recent refresh. This was at full speed. This was actually I got my Model 3 right before they took out the ultrasonic sensors. Um, I keep forgetting about that. That certain new Teslas, even with hardware 3, don't have ultrasonic sensors, and therefore they don't support auto park or summon or smart summon. They took out a bunch of things. They're slowly bringing back park assist, but that's the only feature they've been working on with the occupancy network. All the other features haven't been released yet, and I still had build quality issues. So personally, I'm willing to admit that, like, yes, I think Tesla has build quality problems. However, my difference where I probably lose all the mega Tesla bulls out there is that I don't think other companies are that free of quality control issues. I just don't think they get talked about as much because Teslas are documented. It's statistically been proven that if you put Tesla in your headline, it performs way better than if you put Toyota or Ford. Tesla just brings all the clicks, both for Twitter, both for the media, both for YouTube. Like you see it in the like if you look at the stocks app as much as I do, looking at stock prices and stuff, so many times with other EV automakers, they try their best to work the word Tesla into the headline as much as possible. They'll always say Tesla rival Rivian or Tesla rival Lucid, or sometimes they won't even say Lucid or Rivian because that probably results in the headline not performing as good. So they'll just say one of Tesla's strongest rivals is offering an even cheaper tier, or Tesla rival Rivian has already delivered more pickup trucks. So just Tesla brings the clicks, and there's way more people documenting their build quality experiences with Teslas. And sure, I'm even willing to admit that statistically we have evidence Tesla has more build quality issues than other brands, but I still think other brands have build quality issues. Anytime I've watched a detailer investigate a non Tesla, they still find problems, they still find issues. Maybe they're not as bad as Teslas, but there's still issues. I don't subscribe to that idea that there's just one of those perfect brands out there that doesn't have any build quality issues, unless maybe you're talking about like the Navara or something, a car they build like 10 of at super low volume. Then I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe they have pretty good build quality because the whole thing was built by hand by, one person or something crazy like that. So, um, I don't think there honestly is a great way to time it. What I would be more asking questions about when in regards to your uncle wondering when he should upgrade is how badly does he want gear stocks? How badly does he like ambient lighting? I'd be showing him the Project Highland refresh, pictures of it, impressions of it. A lot of people have gotten up close with it. Ask him, does he like that updated design? Are you okay with capacitive buttons instead of gear stocks? Changing your speed on the screen, because I'm all used to that, and I would probably be very comfortable with a refreshed Model 3. However, if your uncle is just now buying an electric car, there's already a lot of things you got to get used to. Like a lot of things people don't talk about when transitioning from a gas vehicle to an EV. The idea that range actually doesn't matter as much as you may think because of charging speed, charger availability, uh, battery preconditioning, and highway speed versus city speed, and how that affects your efficiency, and all these little things that stack up. So there's already a very large number of learning curves you have to make when switching to an EV, which is why I would be concerned if he'd be willing to make that many changes all at once. Because honestly, the Highland Model 3 kind of feels like it's even difficult for a lot of EV customers to digest, and it's still an EV. It's just there's all these interior changes and stuff. So I would be asking him more questions about that than I would build quality, because I think sure there might be some build quality issues, but I don't think it's going to be that different whether you order it in the summer versus in the spring or the fall. Um, I don't personally. I don't think it's going to make a difference, and that's not me saying that I think the build quality will be great. I'm saying the build quality will be okay, whether you get it early or later in the ramp. I've heard Elon in the past say things like early in the ramp up phase, that's where quality is harder to ensure, but then once the factory's fully ramped, it's easier to maintain quality. I've heard him say that, but I don't see evidence of that in the fact that I've seen build quality issues reported on when a vehicle's been in production for years, and I've seen it reported on from day one. So I statistically it might be a little bit worse at the beginning, but I don't think it makes a big difference. And the other big question I would trying to be prefacing for your uncle is pricing, because if he really does like the ambient lighting or the no gear stocks and the updated headlights and taillights and all the changes they make with the refresh Model 3, whether he likes it, is indifferent about it, or he hates it, I'm pretty confident that there will be price hikes once they start rolling out the big refresh in the United States. I'm fairly confident that that's going to trigger a huge influx in demand. At least it did in China, and they raised prices by about 12 or 15%. In the United States, it'll probably be even more, just because they know they can charge more in the US, because we spend an absurd amount of money on our cars. Um, we all get into debt over our cars. We're just good at it. So anyway, um, the pricing and the features, I think, is the better question, because if he's not interested in spending much more on an EV, I would say now is probably a better time to buy. Like the ventilated seats, how important is that to him? Because sure, I do still feel pretty confident that we're going to get the Model 3 refresh, the facelift in America, probably at some point next year, hopefully early next year. But it will probably come with a price increase. And yes, because it is a more complex vehicle with more features, technically there will, whether it's early in the ramp up or later in the ramp up, there will always be more things that can go wrong. Now your ventilated seats can break. In my car, that can never break because it doesn't have any. Now there's ambient lighting. Could the ambient lighting break or get misaligned, or, there's more parts of the vehicle that have to sync up with each other. I don't have to worry about what happens with my ambient lighting because I don't have any. Also, similarly, I don't see a lot of people talk about this, but maybe it's not that important, but I'm just an efficiency nut. I care about how much power is being consumed all the time and everything. But the new Model 3 has hardware 4, which long term, if you believe in the whole robotaxi thing, that's probably good. You would want to wait until you could get hardware 4. You get better cameras, you get higher resolution, more frame rate. They look smoother. I believe wholeheartedly that it's better than hardware 3. However, the one thing that hardware 4 is worse at is power consumption. From what I gather, the hardware 4 self-driving computer uses a bit more energy than the hardware 3 because it has to process more data, more camera feeds. Um, which doesn't may not seem like a lot until you start realizing hardware 3 even, I think, is consuming like 100 watts when it's in operation. So if you plan on using your car a lot in, autopilot or autonomous mode or whatever, um oops, hit the wrong button. Let me make sure. I see your super chat, Taker. Thank you. I'm just trying to make sure, hopefully the animation appeared, but I had the little overlay in the wrong place. There we go. Future super chats should play the animation. Anyway, hardware 4 is using even more watts. There it is. Okay, we got the animation. We saved it. He asked a great question. Are you more interested in Highland or Model Y rear-wheel drive? Um, that's a great question. Both are exciting to me. The Model Y rear-wheel drive, the only thing I can say about it now that it's out, where were you 2 years ago? Please. Like, seriously. I wanted that exact car for so long. It was too late. I couldn't wait forever. That's the thing. Like, um, no, when it came out, I was not thinking in my head, like, oh man, I should have waited for this one, because I've driven, what am I at now? In this car, I've driven over 23,000 miles. 23,000 miles that could not have been done in my old gas Sonata. In fact, a couple months ago, I don't really drive my Sonata very much. It's more of like the guest car when people are visiting and stuff. Um, so I don't drive it very much, but my mom was driving it, and she started having engine issues with it. And we figured out what the problem was with the starter and everything, but we started realizing very quickly, like, oh man, we could not have kept that car going. Um, because obviously we stopped driving it a lot once we got this car. But if we would have decided to wait, if we would have decided like, oh, okay, let's not buy this car in 2022, let's wait until next year, we would have been likely stranded in a few places, or we would have been stuck with a huge gas car repair bill. Therefore, pulling money away from money that could go towards a Tesla and putting it more towards the sinkhole, which is the internal combustion engine. So waiting was no longer an option. We had already waited basically for 3 years. We originally were going to get a Tesla in 2019 and then realized that, okay, there's other financial responsibilities we want to take care of first before we get the fancy, expensive car. And then we were going to get one in 2020, and then we changed our mind again. And then in 2021, we changed our mind again. 2022, we finally said, okay, we keep pushing this off. We keep talking about it. Let's just commit. Let's just do it because the Sonata was getting a lot of miles on it, and we knew that, okay, it's working okay for now, but it's probably going to have something go wrong with it within the next couple thousand miles. And now, after seeing the engine issues that it had, I'm so grateful that we bought when we did. But simultaneously, oh my God, if there was that Model Y rear-wheel drive available when we were in the market, heck yeah, that would have been our first choice. Seriously, I was begging for that option. I was like, please, just make a lithium iron phosphate Model Y with a single motor, make it super cheap, super efficient. Let me charge the battery however way I want. I don't care about the range because as long as you got a good charging curve and a good charging network, it really doesn't make that big a difference on road trips. So I'm so glad it's out now. I just hope it stays around. I got a little bit more encouragement when Elon actually retweeted it. You know, I remember back in the days when they released the first standard range Model Y with that was rear wheel drive, and let me see if I can find it here. But Elon at the time was at SpaceX. He was working on a bunch of rocket stuff, and then Tesla, I think without his permission, released that standard range Model Y, which was only there for like a couple weeks. And then once Elon left Starbase, they took it down. And everyone was like, hey, Elon, why'd you take down the cheapest Model Y? And he basically said, oh, it's not good enough. It doesn't reach our standard of excellence. I don't buy that. I think the margins just weren't very good on it. So they didn't want it to cannibalize the other Model Y sales. So clearly, Elon was uncomfortable with it. And that's why the old standard range Model Y was only on the site for like 2 weeks and then it was gone. But this new Model Y, you can see here, Elon actually endorsed it. Tesla North America made a tweet saying that with the $7,500 tax credit, it's starting at $32,000. That's amazing how affordable the Model Y is now. And Elon retweeted it saying the most affordable version is now available. It performs well on snow and ice with all season or winter tires. So Elon says a lot of things I don't agree with, but this is something that I think more people should know about. Like a lot of people are convinced that if you drive in the winter, like in a snowy climate, you just have to have all-wheel drive. Like rear-wheel drive just will not work. And I agree with him that I know of many people that drive rear-wheel drive vehicles in the snow and in the ice. They just have to get different tires for it, and it still performs fine. There's just, I think, a lot of people that are subscribed and married to the idea that, oh, it has to be all-wheel drive if it drives off-road. It doesn't, to be honest. So I guess in the moment right now, I'm grateful that the rear-wheel drive Model Y exists because I love owning this car. I love road tripping with this car, and I just want as many people as possible to experience having a great electric car and how much fun it is and how much storage they have and how practical they are and how fun they are. I want as many people in on this as possible, which is why I'm one of the few Tesla investors, it feels like, on Twitter that is not mad at Tesla for lowering prices and not advertising. I'm like, heck no, don't waste money on advertising. That's not going to convince people. Put that money towards, making the product better or lower the price so that more people can enjoy the product because there is no better form of advertising than butts and seats. Like, okay, you want to talk advertising? Gary Black probably asking for Super Bowl ads or banners on websites or, I don't know, billboards asking people to try to convince them to make a $50,000 purchase basis off 30-second ad or 5 seconds driving by a billboard. Oh, Teslas are kind of cheap. Okay. Oh, no, if someone doesn't want an EV, an advertisement's not going to convince them. But you know what might convince them? It's not a for sure thing, but the best chance of convincing someone to buy an EV. I know what it was for me because I was interested in Teslas and electric cars, but I knew that they were going to be expensive, and I there was very low likelihood of me being able to afford one. Still is, honestly. uh, but what changed was I sat in one. My friends rented one, brought it up, and let me drive it around, and I got to experience it firsthand. Once I actually got to drive that thing around, oh man, the gears started turning in my head. I was like, this is the next big thing. I need one of these. Let's look at the money. Let's look at how much these cost. Let's look at my income. Let's try to rearrange everything here. I need this to happen. I want an electric car. It went from dream car material to okay, let's come up with a plan before and after the event of actually getting to ride around in one. So that's what I think. And how do you get more butts in seats? Sell more cars. Increase the addressable market. And the money talks, really. Like, a lot of people might be skeptical about, oh, is it really better for the environment? It is. But oh, the battery pack goes bad. They hear all that stuff until a friend or family member actually owns one, and you start knowing, oh, hey, so and so got one of those. Did they like it? And then they ask about it. Yeah, they really seem to like it. Oh, can we ride around in one for you? There's like a good friend of mine, supporter of the channel, Gary. Um, he was interested. He was watching a lot of electric vehicle content, and he was interested in what the industry was doing and what direction it was going in. And he was like, yeah, I kind of like that idea. And he called me on the phone, because he was also a Tesla investor, and just wanted to thank me for I didn't want to take much credit for it, but he was thanking me for letting him know about Tesla and the stock, because I guess the stock performed very well for him. And I was like, don't give me credit, because the stock could go down again, and I don't want to be to blame. It's like, you never know with Tesla stock. It's very volatile. It's all over the place. So he said thank you anyway. And I asked him, I was like, okay, you seem interested in Teslas. Have you ever ridden in one before? He was like, no, never. And I was like, would you like to? Like Robbie Rotten, rest in peace. Just look up Robbie Rotten, would you like to? That was me on the phone. I was just like, yeah, I'd love to take you on a ride in one. He was like, sure. So I took him and his wife in my Model 3, and I showed him autopilot, and I just drove him around town a little bit and said, here's how it works. And one pedal driving, and there's no start button, and it's all on the screen. And he was amazed. And originally, before the drive, he was like, yeah, maybe in a couple of years I'll wait till they get below $20,000 or something. I'll wait for a cheaper one or something. And he was thinking about it. He was like, yeah, maybe one day. And then, like a month after that, he ordered one, and now he got one. He bought a Model Y. So it's like the butts in seats, at least anecdotally from my experience, butts in seats sell these cars better than any advertisement could. And how do you get more butts in seats? It's by lowering prices, increasing the addressable market, letting people who are interested in them afford them, because I know so many people that love Teslas and want electric cars. They just don't have the money for it, which is totally fine. I was in that exact situation for years. I arguably am still in that situation today. I just feel like I got lucky with, YouTube and your guys' support. Um, and the timing of everything just worked out. But I'm incredibly blessed and incredibly fortunate. Honestly, someone like me probably shouldn't own a car like this, but if you sit on a Tesla, you can't go back. Yeah. Like what Haru was saying. So I suppose the rear-wheel drive Model Y is more exciting to me. The more kind of what happened with Model 3 Highland was almost exactly what I thought was going to happen, which is that for the first week or two, it's the coolest thing ever. It's like the most exciting announcement. It's the biggest deal because, I mean, honestly, in my head, it still is the biggest Tesla refresh of all time when you think about it, because the Model S and X had a pretty big refresh, but they're high price vehicles. They're only for a very small percentage of the market. They're a very small percentage of Tesla's overall sales. They're very pricey. Um, so cool, yeah, the Model S and X refresh was a pretty big deal, but in my opinion, the Model 3 refresh is an even bigger deal because it's Tesla's most affordable model. At least right now, it's their cheapest car, and their cheapest car just got way better. It got different on the outside, different on the inside. They updated the screen, they added the lighting, the ventilated seats, they updated the trunk, the speakers, the efficiency got better, the aero got better, the headlights got better. There were all these changes across the board, and I was like, this is not only going to affect, Model 3 sales, but all of the market now. This Model 3 refresh is going to affect Model S sales because the desirability of the Model S just went down by a lot because the new Model 3 gained a lot of Model S features. And this is going to affect the sales of the Model Y because now everyone's going to wonder when the Model Y is getting these updates. And it's also potentially, for a lot of people, it still is the cheapest Tesla you can buy. So it's a big refresh that affects the masses. Getting rid of the gear stocks on the Model S and X doesn't affect the industry all that much because the Model S and X don't sell at incredibly high volume. Getting rid of the gear stocks on a Model 3 is one of the best-selling cars globally. So that's a big impact on the automotive market. So it was more exciting in the first couple weeks just because it was so new and it had been rumored for a long time, but we hadn't really seen it in all its glory and up close with all its detail. So as we've now had more time to digest it, just talking to my friend Mike about the Model 3 refresh and stuff, it's made me think more like, okay, like the gear stocks aren't that bad, and a lot of people are complaining about the buttons, so that a lot of people that might turn them away. If I'm just looking at the front of both, I kind of prefer the look of the older design a little bit. The new one looks a little weird with all these lines, and there's no more air intakes on the bottom, and the fog lamps are integrated. It just looks a little weird. I'm glad they changed it though, because it's better for efficiency, and you want to update something to increase the desirability. Change for the sake of change in this case is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if it helps with being cost effective and everything. So I'm not mad that they updated it or anything, but I've heard a lot of people complain about how Tesla's ventilated seats age. I guess with the perforation and all the holes in it, it makes the material a bit weaker, and all those little holes pick up sand and dust and debris, and it becomes harder to clean the seats. Um, I'm thinking of Kyle from Out of Spec specifically. He owns a 2019 Model 3 with a white interior, and he has a plaid Model S, which is, of course, from 2021 or 2022. It's not that old, but he said his 2019 Model 3, the seats have aged better than his Model S, which is only a year or two old. It's not even been on the road very long. So yes, I like ventilated seats, but there's some pros and some cons to that design, I guess, because Tesla probably wants to go kind of cheap on it. There's more things that can break in the car now. Ambient lighting is really cool and futuristic, but is it functional? Does it unlock something really? Not particularly. It's just purely a design thing, which I'm still perfectly happy with my current vehicle's design. I don't think it's ugly. And I knew a lot of people that would add ambient lighting aftermarket, and I just didn't really. Yeah, it looks kind of cool, but it's unnecessary to me. To me, I just kind of see extra energy being consumed. It's a tiny amount of energy. I know it's not a big deal, but also, while I would prefer having a 65-watt USB-C port in the center console, it does feel kind of weird that they put it under the armrest because I would have to leave this open to power my MacBook. Whereas with the old design like I have right now, I get two 30-watt USB-C ports, and I can leave the armrest down when I plug in my MacBook. So there's little things that I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of grateful I have what I have. I'm sure, if I'll try to test drive the refresh Model 3 as soon as it's available in my area. I'll probably love it and I'll say all these cool things about it, but is it something worth trading this car in for or selling it? Probably not. Um, there's some people I think asking me to do videos on my resale value, like how much has my Model 3 depreciated? And I could do that, but honestly, I don't care that much, and I think it would probably send a bad narrative of like, oh my God, my car's value is. It's like, okay, that's the value if I sell it. But that's the thing. I don't want to sell it. I have no interest in selling it. I'm very happy with the car. I want to keep driving it. So, yes, I at this point, financially, I'm also motivated to keep it. But even if my resale value is great, for the record, even if I could sell this car at a profit, I wouldn't sell it at this point. Um, just because of how enjoyable it's been. And every time I get in my old car, I'm reminded how uncomfortable the seats are, how much more annoying it is to drive. I felt so relieved the other day because, my wife was going one place and I was going another, so we had to take two cars. She took the old car. Uh, Bless her heart. That was very nice of her. She offered. And I took the Tesla. Um, it's because I was driving my grandma to a doctor's appointment. Okay, is I wanted my grandma to be comfortable. The old car, like the air conditioning, doesn't even work, so I didn't want my 97-year-old grandma to not have air conditioning. So I wasn't that selfish, to be fair. But my wife drove the old car around for the first time in a while, and the next time I saw her, she was like, "Oh, I forgot what it's like to drive that car." And I was like, "Yeah? How was it?" She was like, "Oh, it sucked." She was like, "Oh man, I didn't realize how much I hated that thing." She was like, "Oh, the visibility and the blinkers and all the noise it makes, and you forget like an EV with its low center of gravity with the battery pack, it just stays so planted. That's the probably biggest difference between this car and our old car is whenever you get in that car, there's all this motion. There's all this rocking back and forth. You can tell like there's a big fat engine up there, and when you hit the accelerator, even though we're not, lead foots or whatever, we don't accelerate like crazy. We accelerate gracefully, and it revs up and it goes up like this, and you feel it rock back, and then when you slow down it goes back forward. There's all this additional motion. You can tell just the car feels much lighter, and it's not in a good way, like not in a more comfortable way, like in a more unreliable, unstable way. It's like you're sitting on a boat almost, it feels like, in that old car. And the seats aren't as comfortable, and you can't adjust them. The little sensors in them are broken. They'll probably break in this car. But anyway, so I guess I'm fascinated by both, to answer your question, Taker. But I suppose the Model Y rear-wheel drive is easier to recommend because it's out now in the U.S. And Highland is not. Um, my Model Y rear-wheel drive LFP also have curved dashboard delivery day Tesla fix afterwards. Oh, jeez. Well, it's a good thing they fixed it at least. Tony DeVeria, thanks for joining, says, what lifespan have tires on your Model Y averaged? I replaced my original set at 30,000 and I'm coming up on 60,000 right now, but the tread on this set looks much better than the last at 30,000. That's interesting that you get different tread. So I'm on the original tires I got with the car, 23,000 miles on them. I rotate them about every 7 or 8,000. The manual wants me to rotate them more than that. I think they want me to rotate them every like 6,000 miles or something. But I check them. I know how to check the tread depth and everything, and they're doing fine. They don't. I know everyone says you're supposed to replace them after 30,000 or whatever, but I would genuinely, I want to try to see how long I can get them to last. And part of the reason I think I can get them to last and why the tread doesn't look too bad is, for one, I leave it in chill mode all the time. I've never done a 0 to 60 test in this car. A lot of people probably cringe when they hear me say that, and I don't care. I cringe when I hear the screeching of your tires, or when I hear people, slamming the accelerator to, I've been in it. I've felt it too. I've in much faster Teslas than this one. I've been in them and floored them and felt the acceleration, and it's just not my thing. I'm also not a fan of roller coasters. It's just, I'm not an acceleration junkie. I did not buy this car for the acceleration at all. Um, Quite the opposite, actually. We intentionally got like the slowest Tesla we could, and we leave it in chill mode all the time. So because of those reasons, I just think I'm easy on my tires. If you're flooring it all the time or doing those 0 to 60 tests, that absolutely wears out the tires faster. And yeah, I just I try to treat them carefully and don't do a ton of off-roading or anything like that. So um so far so good. I'll keep you guys posted if, they start wearing down. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything dangerous. I'm not going to be like what do you call it? Dan from What's Inside with the bald tires and uh I won't push them past their limits. I know what a dangerous tire looks like, and I just want to see how well I can preserve them. Basically, we'll see. I would like to try to get them to 60, 70,000. That would be good. Let's see. Is it best for the battery to charge often as possible every day, or let the battery go down to 50 to 60% and charge it up to 80%? We own a Tesla Model Y long range, S Tor Aspen. Yeah, I don't think with a battery as large as a long range, it's going to make that big a difference anyway. Um, the way I understand it, which again, I still don't think it makes a huge difference, is that the Tesla owner's manual says to basically always be charging, so be plugged in as often as possible. And in your case, cap it at 80% would be better. Um, but if you're just AC charging most of the time, yeah, it doesn't hurt. If you're at the end of the day done with 50%, 60%, it's not going to hurt it to plug it in. Um, if anything, I think it actually helps because when you're plugged into the wall, the little background tasks that the car is doing, it will pull from the wall and not from the battery pack. Whereas if you leave it unplugged because you're like, I'm at 70, 80%, whatever, you're adding more cycles to the battery because it has to get all of its power from the high voltage battery and not from the wall. So as far as I can tell from the owner's manual and stuff, your best bet is always be charging. Just be plugged in as often as possible. As long as you're not charging it to 100% every day, then you should be fine. Unless it's LFP, in which case you should be charging it to 100%. Um, Maybe advertising is good for those who don't know much about EVs. I don't think advertising is a good way to educate people. You notice that all gas car ads are very rarely about the car itself. It's usually Matthew McConaughey talking about, freedom and what we aspired to be one day when we grew up. It's all emotional. Or they try to make jokes. Advertising is not where you inform people because if you try to say, hey, did you know electric vehicles have decent range and good charging? No one's going to know what you're talking about. Unless you can find a way to force people to watch 5-minute commercials, you can't summarize, in my opinion, all the benefits of EVs that quickly. Or if you do try to summarize it that quickly, they're not going to believe it. They're going to be like, no, I read an article that EVs blow up and I bet it's not that cheap. The battery lasts 200,000 miles. I don't believe that. Rather than spend money on trying to get customers that don't want electric cars, why not use that money towards lowering the price of the vehicle so that people who do want electric cars can get them? Because again, I don't think more people are going to buy EVs because they saw a commercial about one. You're going to buy one if you sit in one. And the best chance of getting a butt in the seat of a Tesla is by selling as many as possible and increasing the market share so that more people with lower budgets can afford them. I think that supports Tesla's mission statement too. Like trying to spend more money so that you can keep the price high, so that you can continue selling EVs at a higher price. Like they're already selling incredibly well. Like maybe you'd have a point about advertising is good for people who don't know much about EVs if EVs weren't the best selling cars in the world. Okay. The Model Y is the best selling vehicle globally. And people are mad that it's not slaughtering the competition even harder than it already is. It's like so anytime a Toyota RAV4 sells now for any reason, we're all just gonna get mad and say, well, if anybody buys a gas car at this point for any reason, it's because Tesla didn't spend enough money on advertising. It's like, no, people buy all kinds of cars for all different reasons. And very rarely is it that logical. A lot of people just continue to buy Subarus because they had a good experience with the last Subaru. Doesn't matter if you tell them that a Tesla was cheaper and had lower cost of ownership. Yeah, okay, but I don't know that. I don't know that brand. It's great that you're happy with it, but I'm not comfortable with it. I've owned a Subaru before. I want to own a Subaru again. That's what I know. That's what I'm comfortable with. And you can't change buying behavior through advertising that much. Um, I think it's a waste of time, personally, even for the big automakers, because they're already losing a ton of money and they spend billions of dollars on advertising, and they're losing market share to a company that spends almost no money on advertising. So there's no in my opinion, there's no evidence that advertising is this great effective sales technique. Because the companies that are spending all the money on advertising aren't doing that great compared to Tesla. Let's see. I think putting 2 to 3 part-time Tesla employees at Costco with banners and cars to give out test drives and answer questions would be the most effective ad campaign. Eh, I disagree, but you can think that. Venn diagram of Costco members and Tesla buyers is a massive circle with a tiny circle within it. Demographics are aligned just about perfectly. I don't know. I feel like Costco people are more likely to have gas vehicles that are comfortable with them because they buy their gas from Costco and they get the 4% back on the gas. Costco always has a gas vehicle at the exit they're showcasing. Um, Costco people are more likely to have big trucks, big SUVs. EVs are typically not that. Even the Rivian R1S, which I consider a full-size SUV. I know a lot of people, oh, no, it's not big enough for me. I need something bigger. So there's just too much education to be done. I mean, it's like those people that sit at Costco try to get you to buy solar packages. I don't know how effective that is, but it's like they gotta want it. If they don't want it, they're not gonna do it. Um, and you're gonna have to fight all the misinformation that gets spread around. People are, oh, I heard they catch on fire. Oh no, they don't. Oh, okay. Well, that's not what I heard. You calling me a liar? You know, it gets political for people. In my view, they have to experience it, and the best way to experience it is not through a salesperson, not someone at the exit when they're trying to buy groceries handing them a flyer. No, it's if a friend or family member has one and they take a ride in it. That's your best bet. That's what's worked. That's what made Tesla a $1 trillion brand. Um, Handing out flyers in front of a business is not proven to help it grow insanely fast. At least we don't have evidence of it. Um, the first time it's been suggested, I wonder why Tesla doesn't jump on it. I I think Tesla has a better. Um, what did Elon say in this one previous earnings call? Tesla has a better pulse reader on the market than anybody, because all these legacy automakers, it's such a detached system. You have to like request that you want a certain vehicle and then they ship it to the dealer and then the dealer can apply markups or try to haggle with you. And or a lot of the times legacy automakers don't even sell to customers online. They just send out all of the inventory to different dealer networks and then the dealer set the pricing and try to get you to buy such and such package or try to get you to get such and such spec. So those legacy automakers, those other companies, they don't really have a firm gauge on what is the customer most interested in, what pushes sales more than other tactics. And Tesla has done incredibly well with growth and increasing market share and profitability without advertising. So I guess my question is just like, why start now? If you got this far, if you got this part, far is the word I was looking for. If you got this far without advertising, why start now? Like you already became the best-selling car in the world without advertising. So why are we convinced that okay, well, it could be more though. We need to make sure that no other vehicle sells at all for any reason. It's like there's a bunch of people loyal to those other brands, regardless of how good the product is. Teslas could probably be half the price that they are now, and there's still be a bunch of people that say, yeah, but I buy a Ford, though. Yeah, but I need to buy a Toyota. That's what I'm comfortable with. Yeah, but this is way cheaper and way faster and way more acceleration. It's cleaner for the environment. The battery will last you a long time. Yeah, but it's just kind of weird. I'm not used to that. I know a lot of people that think exactly that way. Whereas if you spend all that, you could spend billions of money on advertising and not necessarily get any more money back on the product. Especially right now with the interest rates as high as they are, I don't think it would help much. Finger on the pulse of the market. Yes, but like let's check what are customers buying right now? Like what are they interested in? Tesla has a worldwide website that can see exactly where the orders are coming from. They can see what specifications people are most interested in. They can see exactly what happens when they lower prices by $1,000 or $2,000. Tesla did spend a little money on advertising on Google search results, and they've been promoting lots of things on Twitter with their accounts and stuff, and they've been incentivizing the referral program as well. So I think Tesla probably better than anybody knows how to sell a car at this point. It's just people I think are very impatient. They're just like, why the heck is it? It could be selling more. Why isn't it selling more? It's like, dude, do you not realize how insanely well these things are already selling? They've taken a massive chunk out of the market from all the other automakers, and people are angry that it's not a bigger chunk. Which I think is just coming across as ungrateful. Um, and yeah, exactly, Ivan. There's a bunch of people that think, oh, it's cheap, so it must not be very good. And so and to a certain extent they're true. In my opinion, Teslas are software oriented cars. Like you spend a lot of money on a Tesla, most of that money is going towards the battery pack, the charging network, and the software. It's not going towards this material. This is all kind of basic plastic cheap, inserts. It's not like the most luxurious interior for the money. A lot of people are expecting more fancy things. A lot of people want CarPlay. According to Apple studies, like 80% of car buyers want CarPlay in their vehicle or something, or will only consider a car if it has CarPlay. Does Tesla want to support CarPlay? No, we don't want to support CarPlay. We need to have our own system. It all has to be designed by us. Okay, you just lost a bunch of customers. Elon said something offensive again. Okay, you just lost a bunch of customers. There's a bunch of reasons someone might not go for you. I don't think advertising is the solution, personally. I think the best thing you could do is just make the product progressively better and better, better, cheaper, 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 faster charging, better build quality. Just there's no better slap in the face than silent success. I've been saying that for years. Just silently making better products. More and more people that like your product will continue to research it and buy it and continue to upgrade and get new ones as they come out. And YouTubers, of course, who want to take advantage of the referral program, they'll talk about their experience. They'll say why they love the car so much and why you should get one too. Um, and every year, as the product gets better, the counter argument will sound worse and worse. Just let the people who are dismissive of EVs or people who don't want to buy an electric car, let the argument fall apart on its own. I'm not in favor of like, oh, government mandate, we need to prevent the sale of new cars by this. Let those people just sound dumber and dumber each year because they honestly do already. Um, so in another 10 years, it's going to be even ridiculous. Uh, Advertising is for brand awareness. Everyone already knows about Tesla. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Yes. That's pretty much all automotive brands are doing with advertising. They don't explain with the vehicle how reliable their engine is or what the range is, or they barely even talk about the fuel economy. Most car ads are just like 30-second clips of the car driving through some off-road situation. Or I remember when I was a kid, they always had commercials of pickup trucks pulling, cruise ships. Look how strong it is. Ford built tough. It wasn't about objective stats or statistics. And these companies have been advertising cars for decades. And it's because they know what works with automotive advertising. Brand recognition and playing on people's emotions or, grabbing eyes by putting barely dressed women in the commercials. All that stuff. Advertising you can't get very sophisticated with. Not a good way to educate people. You think Pepsi and Coca-Cola spend a ton of money on advertising because it helps people know all the benefits of drinking Pepsi and Coke? There aren't any. It's bad for you. All they're doing is trying to remind you, oh yeah, I haven't had a Coke in a while. That sounds kind of good. That's all it is brand recognition. Buying a car to caress the interior. Yeah, I know. I don't get it. I definitely never bought a car for the luxury features. I wanted a Tesla for the tech. I wanted it for the battery pack, the charging. I think most of my interest in Teslas and EVs came from a hatred of cars. That's what it all stemmed in. And I think that's why a lot of automotive people hate Tesla. Like my neighbor, even when I first got the car, was like, "Hey, what are you driving a Tesla for?" And I was like, "I don't like paying for gas. I don't want to go to a gas station. They suck. Like the gas is expensive, it stinks, and I can just charge from home or whatever." And I'm used to having a modern, clean user interface on my computer and my phone. I wanted to have one in the car. I was just like, they're cool. They're modern. And he was like, "Yeah, that's true, but you can't work on them. Like you can't fix them yourself. You can't do anything to them without Tesla giving you permission or providing you parts." And I was like, do I look like a guy who works on cars? I don't know if I said exactly that, but that's what I was thinking in my head. I was like, yeah, I don't really want to work on cars, and there's a lot less to work on with an electric car, that's for sure. There are less things that can break, less things that can go wrong. Um, I just, I hate driving. I hate brake pad replacements. I hate transmissions going out. I hate oil pads, oil changes. I hate going to the gas pump. I hate everything involved with owning a car. And a Tesla seemed like the quickest route of getting away from all of those car ownership things. Okay, you're worried about transmission? There's no transmission. Okay, you're worried about head gaskets breaking, which happened on my first car. There's no head gaskets. Okay, you're worried about oil changes? There's no oil changes. You're worried about brake pad replacements? There's regenerative braking. Brake pads should last the life of the car. You're worried about going to the gas station? You can plug in from home. Just all these things across the board that I was just like, cool, all these things I don't have to do. Now the car can literally, I can just get in and go, not have to think about all this other crap. Or I can sit in the car like I am right now, power my laptop, run the AC, and it doesn't hurt anything. I don't have to worry about spewing out carbon monoxide the entire time. Um, I can sleep in the car with the HVAC running, which I've done overnight before when we're on a road trip and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Ivan got the joke. Do I look like a guy with a plan? No, and people tell me, hey, you can't work on those Teslas. I'm always like, cool. I hated that. I had to do all this work on my last two cars, and I always hated it. You know what I notice a lot about people that work on cars? They're always working on cars. It's like, if you know how to work on a car, then you're probably going to keep driving a car that doesn't work very well because you're the one willing to open it up and fix it. And hey, all the better to you. That requires a lot of skill, a lot of patience, a lot of diligence. My brother-in-law is like that. My best friend is like that. He works on gas cars and takes them apart, puts the engines back together. I am amazed by the people that do that. It is no easy feat. And I just spoke with a mechanic a few weeks ago, straight out of high school. He went straight to a mechanic shop and got hired, and now he's running the place and he's making six figures. He's doing great. Super happy for him. I have a ton of respect because there's obviously a ton of gas cars on the road. We're not going to get rid of them overnight, so they need to be maintained. And this guy is helping people fix them. And it's a dying trade, because obviously a lot of people don't want to do it, including me. So I have a lot of respect for those car mechanics because I suck at working on cars and I'm not very good at working on cars and I'm not happy when I'm working on cars. If I was more like fascinated by it or interested in it, like, oh, okay, that's how does this work? Then I could probably get more into it and maybe I wouldn't like Teslas as much, but I'm not that kind of guy. The reason I'm such a, you know, Apple fanboy and so into Teslas and iPhones and stuff and all that is because I don't want to customize it. I don't want to have to tweak it or build it or I just want things to work. I just appreciate good design, smart design, efficient design, and that's what Tesla looked like to me. It was like, is it the easiest thing to work on? No, but are there the least number of things that can go wrong? Yeah, probably. So, heck yeah. Flex says, Drew, I could not agree more. I have a 1982 Corvette in addition to the 2014 RAV4 EV, and I'm always working on my Corvette. That's cool, by the way. I bet it looks awesome. I'm not one of those people that are like, we need to throw every gas car off the face of the earth. Honestly, if you want to argue environmental benefits, probably the best thing you could do with your gas car is drive it until it doesn't drive anymore, which is practically what we did with our old Sonata. At this point, it's okay driving around town, but the last person who looked at it for us told us, don't take it on any road trips. That's literally what he said. He was just like, yeah, the starter's been replaced, but the flywheel is still misaligned. Flywheel. Who knows what that is, right? Tesla doesn't have one. There's no starter in a Tesla. You just kind of get in and say, okay, motor, go now. There's no ignition. Honestly, there's so many things that go wrong with gas cars just involved with getting it to turn over properly, just that ignition process. You bypass all that with an electric car. I love it. There's so many things you get to just skip. And I love skipping steps. I love finding the most quickest, fastest, efficient way to do something. And he was like, okay, if you drive this thing a lot though, over time the starter is going to wear out the gears, the belt's not aligned properly, and eventually the car won't start again. And then you'll either have to replace the starter a second time. It's already been replaced. Thankfully, my mom offered to cover that because she's the one who drives it. We don't really drive it. We just kind of keep it around for the family. So we offered to pay for it for the record, and she said, no, 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 I'll pay for it. So she replaced the starter, and but we were still told that the flywheel is probably the ultimate problem. The flywheel needs to be realigned, and basically you need to take apart the entire engine, which is going to be a several $1,000 process. Um, if we go forward with that route. So because the car isn't driven very much, we're just taking the band-aid approach, which is like short term replacing the starter is going to be cheaper. And if you're not driving it all that much, it's not a big deal. But if you were driving it regularly and consistently, or if you went on a road trip with it, there's a very real chance that you could be left stranded somewhere. And so that's why we're not going to road trip with the old car anymore. Even though it's got a 500-mile range, it's just not reliable. The flywheel is a large metal wheel that is used to reduce vibration from the crankshaft. Thanks, Giovanni. I didn't know that. All I knew was dollar signs. It's like, this needs a new flywheel. And we were like, how much is that going to cost? And the mechanics were like, yes. So I was like, no, I'm not interested in turning this into I don't want to dump several grand into this car because honestly, I've had this happen before with my last vehicle where we had the head gasket blow on it and then we spent several grand on fixing the head gasket, and then like 2 months after fixing that, the transmission went out, and it was going to cost several $1,000s to fix the transmission, and the car was worth probably 2 grand at this point. So it's like, okay, we just poured 4 grand into a $2,000 vehicle, so we just scrapped it. We just decided not to repair it at that point. It was old and it had a lot of miles on it, and it was like, okay, it was technically working. It was a 2000 Ford Ranger, so I probably could have kept driving. Honestly, even though the transmission didn't work, which basically meant that it wouldn't go in reverse, it could go forward though. Which, if I had to pick one direction, that's the one I would pick. You know, so I could drive my truck forward. Luckily, our driveway at the house I grew up at was a circle, so I could just do a loop and put it in park, and then when I was ready to go to school, I would just go straight. Um, but it wouldn't go backwards, which was getting more and more problematic every time we parked it. In a lot of places, I would have to put it in neutral and literally pull it out of the parking space and then put it in drive. And I lived with it not going in reverse for like 2 months. And for 2 months, I just made sure that I didn't go park on any slopes, because that was a big problem. Our driveway, there was a loop section, and then there was a part that went kind of downhill into the house. And at one point, I was just running in to grab something, and I wish I filmed this. This would have been hilarious. I was kind of nervous though. I drove the truck down the driveway without thinking, and then realized, oh crap, I'm gonna either have to push it up the driveway or I have to go off road and drive into my neighbor's yard to try to get out, which is what we ended up doing. Luckily, the neighbor didn't mind. He didn't have like a lawn on this side of his house or anything, so it was just off road. But we asked for his permission, and he said, "Yeah, go for it." So I just put it in drive and drove through the neighbor's yard. But it was like, okay, this isn't working anymore. Anyway, Jordan says there's 2,000 moving parts in a gas car versus 20 in an EV. Is it really only 20? I wonder if that counts the mirrors and the windows and stuff. Because that's something I want as little moving parts as possible, because I know anything electronic actuator or anything that has to move consistently is going to wear out and break over time. And that's one thing I really hate about this car, how many moving pieces there are when I do this. Like, you push the button, which unhooks a latch. It's a digital button, it's not a physical door release. The window has to go down so that the door can open. And then when I close it, the window has to go back up again. And I'm like, okay, if you do that enough times, this is probably going to break at some point and it's going to tear out the trim. That's one thing I prefer about my old car's design, is the windows didn't have to every time you open and close it. They were just integrated into the door frame. I don't know why Tesla does it this way. It's probably cheaper to just leave the glass in the door when they're installing it and everything. It's probably some manufacturer friendly thing, but the Lucid, actually, I'll say something nice about Lucid. So be sure to screen capture this, because I don't do it often. But Lucid actually just keeps the window integrated with the door frame, which is funny because whenever I complained about the windows going up and down, um, everyone tells me, Drew, it's a luxury feature to have frameless windows with like nothing around the glass. And it was like, who decided that was luxury? To me, that's just fragile. And Lucid is supposed to be more luxurious, and it doesn't even have that. So, am I wrong or is Lucid wrong? Because we can't both be wrong on that one. I don't get it. Um, let's see. Jorge Cintron says, I feel the same way, and also why even all of my lawn equipment is electric. No more dealing with mixing oil, gas, changing filters, spark plugs, and killing myself trying to get the crap to start. Seriously, though, there is so many annoying processes with lawn equipment when it comes to getting it to start. I still have a gas mower, I'm afraid to announce. It's a long story. Basically, the short of it is, I there's a huge portion of the year where I don't mow my lawn, because it will die in the summer anyway, and it's not worth watering because we'll be gone, and the sprinklers don't reach everywhere. So unless someone is here babysitting the lawn, which we're not going to ask someone else to do because we're not even going to see it, basically it's just easier for us to let the lawn die for huge chunks of the year, and then other types of the year is not dead, but it doesn't grow very much. So there's really only like a 3 month window in the year where we mow the lawn. And I do have an electric weed eater and blower, though. I've had those longer than I've had this car. They're not very good, but they work. I was just using them on the weekend. We did a bunch of house stuff. But the gas mower I've had for a very, very long time, and it's fine. The wheels are supposed to propel it, and it doesn't, so that part's broken. But getting it to start is usually the hardest part. Once it's started and going, it works fine. But we're actively looking for an electric mower. But because we spend so little time mowing, we're not like, oh, you can save so much money with an electric mower. It's like, not really. The break even point on the electric mower is really pushed out, and I think the longer we wait, the better the deal we can find. So I'm looking around for some, but yeah, sadly, we still have a gas mower. Richard says, "Hey Drew, how was your day? It's going great. Thanks for asking. We had a productive weekend, um, and I had a fairly productive morning. Been spending so much time on the phone with the stupid middle class tax refund people. It's supposed to provide relief for middle class citizens. It is not. It's been the most stressful thing of my month. My wife doesn't want a Tesla because she doesn't like Elon," says John McDowell. Hey, you know what? A reason is a reason. You may not agree with it. I don't agree with it. Like for the record, my wife hates Elon too. It didn't stop her from buying the car. But yeah, she complains about him all the time, and but she just also acknowledges like, yeah, okay, it's Elon sucks, but the car is great. The car is fun and safe and reliable, and we enjoy the product. We don't like the guy who was part of the company that made it, but she, I think, is just reasonable enough to understand that you can separate a product from its creator. Like Steve Jobs was a jerk to a bunch of people, but that didn't stop us from buying Apple products. Um, Thank God Steve Jobs didn't have a Twitter account. He probably would have tweeted some horrible things. Um, let's see. Speaking of interior, did I see the shot of the Cybertruck white interior? I saw a brief shot of it. I'm not sure if I'm convinced that will be in production of some kind. I still think it makes way more sense for them to just go super simple, make everything one size fits all. Um, I'm checking for any lightning round news. But look, I mean, look at this picture here. Someone got. This Cybertruck's not, it doesn't say release candidate. It's just in someone's like cul-de-sac, in some like random residential area. It's like, what's the big deal? There's a bunch of employees, I guess, probably higher end Tesla executives that are just testing out the trucks and getting to drive around and find out if there's any problems and report them before the media gets a hold of it. When is Model Y Highland coming? No one knows, but my guess would be in China around end of next year, and then in the US probably early 2025. That's my guess. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Um, I tell people that my Tesla isn't a car, but a room with wheels, camp mode, and FSD really makes it feel like that. I can't wait for Cybertruck with mobile Starlink. I'm going to live out of it for weeks at a time. Nice. That sounds like fun. I would like to try that. I've never done like an extended road trip like that before. I've done a lot of traveling, but usually our big trips are so far we take a flight and then we don't have a car and stuff. Um, Fun fact, I've actually never rented a car. We've gotten taxi rides and stuff, but on all of our vacations or trips or whatever, we usually are visiting family, and the family member has a car of some kind that we use. And there's never been a situation where we're like, oh, well, we need a car for an extended period, so let's rent one. Never happened. Jackson 14 says, my biggest problem with gas cars is there are way too many failure points. Yes, exactly. Thank you. You're like me, Jackson, which is why I'm trying to minimize the number of failure points in my Tesla. That's part of the reason, actually, I turned off the auto folding mirrors. For one, I didn't like the noise. They were like the noisiest actuators in the car, it felt like. Every time I parked the car and you walk away from it, you hear that, and it annoys me. And then when you unlock the car and you open it, when you finally get back to it, it goes, and I don't live in a big city. I'm rarely parking in situations where it's like right on the road and I'm worried about someone knocking my mirror off or something. So I don't really care. Like where I live, everybody's driving F-150s, like literally right behind me. I'm not going to dox myself or show my neighbor's house, but literally right across the street from me, right behind the camera. I'm pointing at it right now. Is an F-150. Over here is a looks like a, what is that, Chevy something? The tree's kind of blocking it. But all the people around where I live are driving these giant pickup trucks all the time. So the parking spaces are kind of optimized as such, which is why I'm not worried about my mirrors sticking out very much. But I am worried that all the time they're folding back and forth, back and forth. One of them's going to break one day, and then I'm going to have an expensive Tesla service visit. That's actually one of my biggest concerns with this car and how it ages, is not the high voltage battery pack. Honestly, I think people give way too much concern and worry to that. People are like, oh, how's the battery, how's the battery, what if how long does the battery last, how many miles can the battery take, how should I charge it? I'm like, your high voltage battery is probably going to be fine. Even decades from now, I bet it'll still probably get the job done. It may not go as far as it did on day one, but I think the longer you own an EV, the more you realize that maximum range number is kind of overrated. As long as you have chargers that you can plug into and a decent charging speed, you'll be fine. But what I'm more worried about is little things breaking, out of warranty repairs, because Tesla service does not appear to be very affordable from what I can see. Maybe it's reasonable considering the higher price of the car, but a lot of people who don't normally spend that much money on cars are buying these cars because they're cheaper to own, and they're trying to, they splurge a little bit like I did. I bought cheap gas cars that were only a couple grand, and then I bought this crazy expensive car. Um, so that was a big jump for me, but we were okay with it because it's like, well, yeah, you spend more, but over time it costs a lot less to own and hopefully less to maintain. But I saw someone getting a headlight replaced in their Model 3 for like 1,000, 1,200 bucks or something. I'm hoping the Matrix LEDs last longer, so these headlights should last me a really long time. But door handles getting sticky. I had to borrow a 2018 or 19 Model 3 when they were working on this car, and there were little issues with it like that. Um, and I don't know. I'm more worried about tiny little failure points all stacking up. And then on the future, 5 years from now, I'll do a recap video and be like, I had to take my Tesla into service like 8 times this year, and it ended up costing me about what a gasoline bill would cost me. But that's okay. We didn't buy this car because we expected to save money on it. We knew we would never break even on it, but we just we're like, okay, if we're going to be spending this much money, we just want to have a really nice car experience, not a crappy one. Because as long as you got a car that burns gas, you're going to be spending a certain amount every year. Right now, I'm super thankful we have this car because the gas prices in my area are horrible, god awful. A lot of the gas pumps are over $5 a gallon, and that's when I'm like, free supercharging, I'll take it. Thank you very much. That sounds great. Oh man. Um, I saw a rumor that there is a roll down bed window on Cybertruck. Anyone else? I've seen that rumor, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. And I think there's a lot of BS floating around about the Cybertruck. And by BS, I mean bologna sandwiches, of course. Um, Travel trailer. I'll likely talk more about it on the podcast at some point. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be really cool to see your experience after. Okay, you've done a cross country road trip with a gas pickup truck towing, and then hopefully in the not too distant future you guys find yourself in an electric pickup truck and do a cross country trip with that. That would be interesting. um let's see, I think the Cybertruck will be a bigger hit to the American truck market than anyone even realizes. I think it'll be hard to tell because pickup trucks sell at insanely high volume in the United States. Like I said, I'm looking at one right now, right behind the camera. There's an F-150, and they're seriously just, they're all over the place. And my point is, I don't think Tesla has the production capacity to overtake the F-150 in sales, at least right now. Elon said that they were targeting about 250,000 units a year at Giga Texas, and they're already having to expand Giga Texas. Like it's not big enough right now to fit all the just the startup initial phase of Cybertruck production. So my guess is the initial Cybertruck assembly line that we're seeing all the castings from and all the Cybertrucks that are being tested right now. That's probably optimized for about 200, maybe 250K a year. And Ford sells usually over 600,000 F-150s a year. And a lot of people probably just don't realize how insane that is. Like how long it took to build up that assembly line, and how long it took for them to build up their factories and infrastructure to support all those trucks and everything. So, yeah, the Cybertruck, I agree, is going to be absurdly popular, but we're not going to have accurate data really, because we're going to be in the early access. Like everybody's trying to get one, like at the Peterson Museum. I bid $400,000 on the Cybertruck to get one early, and that's not an accurate view of, okay, how does the Cybertruck perform in today's market? Like once it's out, once it's settled at a price point that won't be fluctuating a lot. When it's early, it's probably going to be super expensive. So a lot of people won't buy it because they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Because essentially it's a bidding war. When everybody wants one, but there's only a few available, that's usually when Tesla jacks up the prices. So early on, I think it will be absurdly expensive. And a lot of people say, oh, that's insane. That's ridiculous. I can't justify that. And then over time, as they catch up on the demand, and everybody who wanted one first and wanted to make YouTube videos about it or rent it out on Turo, once they all get theirs and Tesla can ramp up production more to match that demand, they'll start lowering prices. But look at the price of the Model X. When you think about it, like January of this year, it was like $121,000. And now after incentives, it's like $70,000. It's almost lost like half of its new purchase price in less than a year. And that was purely because of supply and demand. There wasn't that much change in regards to the manufacturing cost. There was probably some, I'm sure, with lithium prices falling and everything. But overall, I think it was mostly a supply and demand thing. Everybody who wanted one, because they were hard to find and there weren't that many. Now everybody that couldn't wait to get one has got one, and now Tesla has more than there are people willing to buy them, so they lower the price accordingly. And I think a very similar thing could happen with the Cybertruck, where the price goes, and then as they catch up with the orders and the demand isn't as high because everybody who wanted one got one, um, like the people who wanted one that were willing to pay whatever they could to get one. And then you'll see the price come back down. But Tesla rarely keeps prices the same for very long. Um, I do think it'll be the most profitable electric truck on the market, that's for sure, which means the company is going to be incentive to make lots of them, unlike other brands who lose money on every EV sale. Um, Tony says the rear window behind the cab rolls down so that AC from the cab goes into the bed, if that's what you're asking about. Confirmation! We got it right here from Tony, folks. Um, I don't know. I hope that's true. Small travel trailers aren't too costly, but yeah, with an EV, you see more range issues. Lightship would help solve it, but it's a bit huge in size and cost. Smaller Lightship would be great. I'm more interested in trying to bypass the whole towing thing, because I feel like that just throws off all efficiency whenever you hook up a trailer. I'd be more interested in, honestly, if I was Lightship, I wouldn't have made it uh, a trailer. I would have just made an RV. I feel like it wouldn't have been that much more expensive or that different, and a lot more people could justify it. It's like, okay, what if the trailer had a battery pack? Oh, that's a good idea. That way it has its own range. Okay, what if the trailer had its own powertrain and motors to help alleviate the range loss? Okay, yeah, that's. Hey, why don't you just put a steering wheel in that thing? How about a steering wheel and some pedals? Boom! Now you just got a big old electric. Uh, Make a super aerodynamic, efficient electric RV. I think, and then you don't have to buy a $50,000 Lightning and $150,000 trailer. Instead, just buy $160,000 RV. In my head, that makes a lot more sense than a trailer that hooks up to a truck, because obviously the part of the vehicle that steers it and has pedals, that doesn't take up much space. You barely have to change the design. Like look at those I'd make it look like the Tesla Semi, honestly. Take something like the Tesla Semi, centered driver position, not just for visibility, but also for maximizing your aerodynamic flow, trying to optimize for that teardrop shape best you can, which the Lightship kind of does. But yeah, you just have that centered driver's position. Just tweak the Lightship a little bit. Just the little bulge out the front. Instead of a trailer hitch, you just have a front seat with a passenger for the driver. and then you can steer it. You got your screens up there and your pedals, and then keep the battery pack, keep the powertrain. Yeah, and then you've got this big thing that can, unfold more solar when you're parked, and you can leave out in the woods for days at a time because you got this huge battery pack to pull all your energy from. You could have Rivian style, gear tunnels that unfold more functionality, make it a full on RV, with the pop up things that open up more space when you're parked and stuff, and then it all folds up and condenses down when you're on the road. Um, that would be interesting. I think a lot of people might do that if Tesla made one. They'd be like, "That's it. I'm selling my house. I'm living on the road now forever," which would be cool, honestly. I mean, I don't know if I would buy one, but I'd consider renting one for a road trip one summer or something. Then it's just a matter of, okay, how do you charge the dang thing? Because that's the question that I didn't think enough people were asking about the light ship. Okay, you've got this big battery pack in a trailer, and it's got its own powertrain, and that helps propel itself when you're connected to an electric truck, or I guess any truck. It doesn't have to be electric. But when the battery pack on the trailer gets low, how do you charge it? Because F-150 Lightning and Rivian, they don't really have the needed accessories to provide high amounts of power to the trailer. Maybe they could slow charge it with an AC plug in the back, but that's not really going to be feasible for long distance. Um, So does that mean that you have to charge up your truck at the EA station and then plug in your trailer afterwards to the EA station? Yeah. Ugh. That's going to be kind of a headache. Um, Cybertruck is the most divisive vehicle of all time. I've seen people who can't stop pooping on it nonstop, um, and people who fawn over it like it's going to give them superpowers. Yep, I have too. I can say with full confidence that this channel would not exist if it weren't for the Cybertruck. Originally, I didn't feel like there was that much to say about electric cars, and I didn't have enough news to kind of turn it into its own separate channel. I would have just talked about it occasionally on my Taylor's of Tech channel. But the Cybertruck quickly became my most viewed video of all time, and so many people wanted to talk about it. And my still to this day, my best performing videos are all about the Cybertruck. And I don't know, I think it's the accumulation of a lot of things, a bunch of things all come together. It's like most of my audience is America, obviously, because I'm American and I talk about American news because I know how it affects me, because I live here. So the majority of my audience lives in America, and I speak English, of course, so that helps. And on top of that, pickup trucks are the best-selling vehicles in America. Tesla is the biggest, like, most trendy, viral automotive company because they're like the combination of tech company and
Yes.
automotive company. It's all this merging of electrification, and then Cybertruck is not a a typical truck. They did something drastically different from everything else on the market. So it's weird. It sparks conversation, gets people talking. Pickup trucks are high in demand. Tesla's high in demand. Pickup trucks popular. I'm in America. So it's just, I don't know what it was. It's the perfect storm, I guess, for my channel. But basically, Cybertruck is the reason this channel exists and the reason this channel has done somewhat successfully. I mean, you can come up with your own definition of what that means, but for me at least, I would say the channel has been a pretty big success. So thank you, by the way, for the super chats and support, like from Neil Pitts, who said, "Is there value in a video that explores how to make home charging work and optimize convenience, electrical costs, cable management, sidewalk safety, explain one-time costs at home versus cost of gas, etc." Yeah, there's certainly value in it. I feel like it's kind of overdone personally. Like even before I got my car, it felt like there was hundreds, if not thousands, of videos that all kind of explain that stuff. Um, I guess when I first got my car, I did a little bit of coverage on how I charge it, but yeah, I feel like there's not much to say that hasn't already been said, but I guess I could try again, I suppose. I appreciate the super chat. Maybe I'll consider. The truth is I don't know much about sidewalk safety. I don't live in a place where there's we live in pedestrian hating America, right? Where there's no sidewalks anywhere. But yeah, like I use an extension cord, um which I think I talked about in a few videos before, because I realized that installing the breaker box basically for our house is not close to where the car is parked. There's several. probably 20, maybe 30 feet between where the breaker box is and where I parked the car. So we talked to an electrician and asked, okay, how much is it going to cost to put a NEMA 1450 outlet right here in the garage? And he was like, yeah, it'll probably cost a couple $1,000s. And I was like, oh, geez, that's too much. But he said, okay. Well, and then he didn't actually suggest this. I looked it up. I was like, can you buy an extension cord that supports 50 amps? Like, are there NEMA 1450 uh, extenders? Because I was like, how much would it cost you to just put the outlet for the car right beneath the breaker box, literally like a foot below it, put a NEMA 1450 outlet? And he said, oh yeah, I could do that for like $200. So the cost of installing the outlet mainly comes down to how far it is from your breakers. So I was like, okay, put the outlet as close as you can, and then I'll buy an extension cable. I looked it up and I saw other people were doing it. Someone was like, yeah, I charge my Tesla every night with this cord. So I was like, cool. It's possible to use an extension cord on a high amperage outlet. I think the cable cost like $100. Wasn't that bad. And it was like 30 feet long. So I stretched the extension cord from the breaker to the garage, and then I plugged the Tesla charger into that, and it works great. And I've used it for over a year now. Um, the only recommendation I'd give to people is that uh, NEMA outlets are not rated to be plugged and unplugged all the time. Like 110 outlets, in your house that you can unplug and replug those in all the time. They'll be fine. NEMA outlets, because the pins are much bigger and stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they're not designed to be plugged and unplugged all the time. So, as far as I understand it, if you do what I did and you use an extension cord to charge, just plug them in and then leave them plugged in. Don't be unplugging the NEMA outlet from the extension cord, the Tesla on the Tesla end or on the breaker end. On either end, just leave that extension cord. All the NEMA plugs with those three giant pins, leave those plugged in as often as possible. You can disconnect the mobile connector from the Tesla adapter, which I have back there when I go on a road trip or something. There's a I need a picture. Why don't I just look this up? Has anyone else asked a question on this post? No, we're good. Where is it? Tesla mobile connector images. Okay, how can I explain this better? Can I download this picture? They make this so annoying. Save, save as. Sure, let's do that. Where'd it go? Didn't even save it. Ah, images. Okay, so this end, you'll just have to look at it behind me. This end, the 1450 adapter, this plug here, leave plugged into the extension cord if you do what I did. But you can disconnect this part from the mobile connector right here when you go on a road trip. And you just unplug this part, leave this at home, leave the extension cord plugged into the breaker as much as possible, because these pins, I guess, are not supposed to be plugged and unplugged a bunch of times. I've been told that. I haven't heard of anybody that said, "Hey, Drew, I unplugged and replugged in my NEMA connector thousands of times and never had a problem." Good for you. I'm just telling you what someone else told me. All right. Um, a lot of people like living amenities. Big electric RV would be very cool. Guess it would be a recreational electric vehicle. Yes. Why hasn't someone made that? I guess I've heard the market for it isn't as big, but I think it might make more sense if it's electric. Like, I think more people would be interested in an electric RV, because the truth is, RVs have to have big battery banks anyway because people are living in them. But if you had an even, if you just had a battery and there was no combustion engine or anything, and you just drove it, trying to make a super aerodynamic one with DC fast charging probably could have a really great charging curve because the battery pack would be huge. And then I think people would be more interested in the RV because they'd be cross shopping it with like houses instead of cars. Like, you could live out of this thing. Like, here's where you refill the water tanks, here's where you empty the sewage, but you just plug in here and you got this giant charger And I guess, someone like that, they just tell you try to plug in at the end of the chargers because you're going to have to park in these tiny charging stalls. Um, let's see. I think the Cybertruck's windshields and glass roof could be removed and a camper put on top. Tesla Semi would be way over engineered for a camper. I don't know. I think we're thinking of different things. Camper, I feel like, is a little bit different than an RV. But, like, I don't just mean like a truck that has some bed space over the top. I mean like a full RV, like in the movie RV. Harvey Smith says, got Model Y 3 weeks ago. Free charging, zero point 0.5 miles away. Has been sweet. Ooh, that's a great deal. Congratulations, Harvey. Do you think if the government didn't politicize EVs, people would be more receptive to them? No. People are just resistant to change in general. Um, I think people would be resistive regardless of what the government did. But I also don't think the government has to politicize things. People do that automatically. Because a lot of the motivation behind electric vehicles is because of efficiency, which ties into the environment. Gas cars are bad for the environment. Okay, one political party might say, oh, no, they're not, or they're not that bad for the environment. And then another political party will say, yes, they are bad for the environment. We need to switch to electric vehicles. And then another political party will say, yeah, but electric vehicles are actually worse for the environment than gas vehicles. So you get all these arguments involved. Um, I think those same arguments would have happened whether or not the government chose to politicize them. I don't even know what that means. What, attach federal tax credits? There's a reason travel trailers exist and are large sellers in the RV space, but yeah, electric RVs will get better in range, just like CUV EVs have in the first generation. Yeah. See, I was going to say with gas pickup trucks, a trailer, there's a lot of cost advantages, right? Because a gas pickup truck can store a ton of energy in its gas tank, even if, yes, most of it is lost. Um, and there's not, because they're not very aerodynamic and because there's so many energy losses in the combustion engine process, aerodynamics doesn't play as major of a factor because you're pulling from like a 1000 kilowatt hours of stored energy in the form of gasoline versus an electric vehicle can't store energy as densely, which is why they're more efficient but also much heavier. And that's why aerodynamics comes into play a lot more with an electric vehicle because there's less energy to store. So every little ounce of energy you consume counts, which is why typically when it comes down to towing, EVs lose about half their range. Um, Gas trucks lose a lot of range too, but the difference is it's not hard to make a gas truck go further because you just put in a bigger gas tank. Whereas putting in a bigger and bigger battery pack is exponentially more expensive. Whereas just putting in a bigger gas tank is not that hard. It's literally just empty space. Where do you pour this liquid? And then, of course, try to put in a fairly efficient combustion engine and make it a little bit aerodynamic. But yeah, they don't try very hard. So, or some trucks do hybrids and stuff like that. But um, in the case of an EV, the energy is not as plentiful, so you have to be more careful with how you use it, and you got to put a bigger emphasis on aero. And then when you attach a trailer to that, it just throws everything off. The powertrain's working harder. There's more aerodynamic drag. So I feel like while trailers might make a lot more sense for um, gas pickup trucks, a dedicated battery powered electric, RV might actually be more practical than a lot of trailers are for electric trucks because I'm trying to think, you probably never get as aerodynamically friendly with a truck plus trailer as you could in just a super aerodynamic RV. I don't know. Aerodynamic shape is not very RV friendly, I guess. But I don't know. I'd like to see someone try. Um, Mike Feed says, not everyone buys them to save the environment. I didn't. The Model Y is a badass car. Yeah, sure. No, I don't think that's enough to get people to buy something. Like people aren't going to spend $50,000 on a car just because it's better for the environment. They want to make sure it's a good car. They want an upgrade. People don't want to compromise for the environment, unfortunately. It's a sad fact, but that's just kind of the way the world works. But there's a certain give and pull you have to accommodate for because obviously the best thing, ironically, this is kind of sad, kind of morbid, but the best thing you could do for the environment is not exist because humans are bad for the environment. All the emissions we cause just by existing, just by eating more food, consuming more resources, using up more energy, throwing out more garbage. Like humans just living life are damaging to the environment. But of course, you don't want to say, okay, let's all just die or let's just stop having kids so that the environment will be better. That's not a great sustainable solution. You want to look for how can someone be happy, continue to live their life, continue to enjoy life, and also not be a big, you know, negative to the environment. How does someone enjoy life and have less emissions and less strain on our resources? And that's a bit more productive way to look at it. Um, Class A ERVs would be expensive as heck. ICE Class A motorhomes are already super pricey. Yeah, but I'm saying the trailer approach with an electric truck is already super pricey. Electric trucks aren't very cheap in the first place, and trailers are going to eat into their range a ton, which is going to make the road tripping experience a lot harder. Um, and if the solution is okay, let's put battery packs in the trailer, well, that just adds to the overall price, which is why I think in the case of electricity and battery powered vehicles, an RV might start to make more sense than the trailer towing. Imagine pulling up to a supercharger with a house. I mean, is it that different to pull up with a big old trailer? I don't know. I guess it depends on the size of your trailer. For some people, the trailer's not that big, so it's not that big a deal. But I've seen a lot of trailers where I'm like, yeah, you'd probably be better off with an RV at that point. The trade-offs between an electric RV versus a trailer will really come down to how often you're moving. Once a week, yeah, the trailer's going to suck. Once a month, you'll like being able to decouple that truck. That's a good point. Yeah, it depends on the use case. I just, I guess my main focus was more on the subject of the light ship. Like, should we put batteries in the trailers? And my suggestion is I think at that point, that's when an electric RV makes more sense. If you're not putting batteries in the trailers, then a trailer will probably be fine because it's not going to be terribly expensive. And you just need to hope that there's good charging in your area and that you can get a fairly high range electric pickup truck. That's that's going to be for some people the better solution if you're disconnecting all the time or not all the time. If someone was just like living on the road indefinitely, and that was just their house, then yeah, I don't think a trailer would be better. I'd rather just have a big old RV. I'm kind of cross shopping the light ship RV with a house right now. The combo of light ship plus underdeveloped off grid property versus a house. Personally, I'm gonna guess that the house is a better investment, and that comes from being a huge electric vehicle fan. Trust me, I love what you're thinking. I love the way you're thinking, but a house, even a crappy one, speaking as someone who lives in a crappy house, um, even a crappy house will appreciate over time. An electric truck and even a really nice, fancy, high end electric trailer is still going to depreciate over time because it's not real estate. Those are still, you know, vehicles. And with a few exceptions for some collector's item out there, pretty much vehicles never appreciate with time. Sorry, Elon. Even with full self driving, your vehicle can depreciate. Just bring along an electric generator to extend the range of your Cybertruck. It's been done. Just 5 gallons of gas will charge 100 kilowatt hours. Is it really that much? I don't think it's that much. Um, 5 gallons of gas may contain 100 kilowatt hours, but we don't have an efficient way to extract that much energy out of it. Um, yeah, Mike just said from personal experience, gas generators suck. Yeah, I don't think it'll extend it by that much. Or even if it could, it would charge very slowly because your gas generator is not going to DC fast charge the truck. So it would charge it very slowly, very loudly, and with a lot of toxins. I don't think that's a good solution. You still want the batteries and solar in the trailer for when you're living slash camping in the trailer off grid, though. Well, I think the idea is the truck would supply all that, like the F-150 Lightning. It's got all those outlets and it's got a big 135 kilowatt hour battery pack. If you're out in the woods camping, you're not going to use 130 kilowatt hours quickly. I mean, most houses don't use 100 kilowatt hours in I mean, maybe a big house could use 100 kilowatt hours in a couple days, but that's probably coming from a big air conditioner, a full size refrigerator, and, you know, um, washing machine, dryer. If you're out camping, you're probably just using, a cooktop stove and maybe some lights and um, maybe a little beacon to power a Wi-Fi gateway or your phone or your laptop. That's that. No, you could probably last several weeks on a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is what the truck's going to have. Um, I guess you could have additional batteries in the trailer, but it's just going to be so expensive. Um, well, hi Brandon. Earlier I was showing the footage of the Cybertruck driving through Baja, but we kind of watched it a few times now, so I clicked away from it. But what I like is when I do this Mac OS screen capture thing where you can see my MacBook display behind me, it has to flip the image. So it looks like I'm in the driver's seat of my car, but I'm not. This is mirrored. But anyway, people always critiqued and got angry whenever they're like, "Why are you in the passenger seat? You should be in the driver's seat." But now that it's mirrored, it looks like I'm in the driver's seat. It's cool. I've owned over a dozen gas generators. Maintenance is a pain, but it's a solution with no alternative. There's alternatives. You just probably don't like them. Just they're expensive. Just like the auto industry, I think electrification across the RV space will have multiple options for similar things. It'll be interesting to see how travel trailers respond to the electric movement. Yeah, there will be lots of different solutions. I mean, maybe more of an aerodynamic emphasis will make sense, but Taker 610, thank you for the super chat. He says, one of the Rivian stories guys, I refer to them that way a lot too. The guys from Rivian stories. Rivian's max pack isn't actually larger than their mid pack. It just uses more energy dense cells. It's still 10,000. I've heard that as well. Um, but I mean, I think that's an oversimplified way of looking at it. It is still a larger battery pack in regards to it holds more energy. So, but it's not physically larger. Yes, that's correct. It uses the same number of cells as the large pack. The battery pack's the same design, same shape, and everything. It's just they have 2170 cells that can hold more energy. So it's still a bigger, it's not a physically bigger battery pack, but I mean, that's not how I would gauge battery pack size. I would gauge how, when someone asks how big is the battery pack, I feel like they're usually asking how many kilowatt hours.
Yes.
They're not asking what are the physical dimensions. For instance, my lithium iron phosphate battery pack is bigger than the 2170 standard range Model 3s and Ys were. Physically it's bigger, but energy storage wise it's not really bigger. They're both, around 60 kilowatt hours. So I would probably not bring that up. That's not how I would answer it, but yes, I've heard multiple people who communicated with Rivian who have gotten to test drive the dual motor and the Max Pack, and everything I've heard about the Max Pack sounds like a disappointment. Like it's cool that they hit that 400-mile range mark, but I think our brains are turning that into a bigger deal than it really is. It just sounds cool because it broke another milestone. Like we went from 300 to 400. Wow, okay, it's up there, but in reality, compared to the large pack with the dual motor system, it's only like 50 miles range difference, which on a road trip at highway speed isn't really going to make that big a difference, especially if you're towing. It's going to be a difference of like 25 miles for an extra $10,000. It charges exactly the same, which is a drawback in my opinion because the Rivian doesn't inherently really charge that fast in the first place. It has overheating issues with the battery pack when it's under load too. So if anything, I think your road trip time will be about the same with the Max Pack. So that's why I have a hard time recommending it. Um, I just funded the Anchor Solix F3800. They need a better name on Kickstarter for home backup power. Good for you. Mike's more interested in that as well. Yeah, I did a whole video on Lightship, Austin. Their max pack was originally supposed to be 180 kilowatt hours, but it's more like 145 kilowatt hours. Yeah. I think, I mean, Rivian never officially stated 180 kilowatt hours. There were just some leaked documents that said their three battery pack sizes were supposed to be 105, 135, and 180. That was going to be the three tiers. But I think originally, when that document first leaked, they were probably basing it off of their quad motor system because originally they did say they were going to do a max battery pack with a quad motor that would go over 400 miles on a charge. Quad motor was much less efficient. Um, and that was before, those leaked battery pack specs were not official when they were leaked, and that was before production had even started. So Rivian's done a lot of work since then, and they've ramped up production a lot, and they've figured out, okay, a lot of customers probably care about that spare tire, so in the gear tunnel and how to best optimize for that and everything. So they probably just realized 180 kilowatt hours was just going to take up too much space in the car. It was going to make it too heavy, and quad motor takes up a lot of additional space, and their new dual motor system is a lot more efficient, a lot more smaller, and it just made way too much sense to just go with dual motor and do a max battery pack. I honestly think most electric trucks in the future are going to be dual motor. I don't think the future is everybody's driving around with three motors or four motors. Like, I think the use cases for those are pretty niche. Like, it's cool for individual torque vectoring when off road and to have some crazy acceleration, but the truth is you can get so much great performance and acceleration with a dual motor system. That's what Tesla's been discovering, and that's probably why they're starting with the dual motor Cybertruck, and that's why Rivian is discovering, hey, we can do a high performance Cybertruck and we can do a more efficiency focused Cybertruck. Sorry, Rivian realized they can do a performance dual motor and a non performance dual motor, and they're both still great. They're both still very capable off road. They're still both very fast, and they can both tow a lot. Um, Cybertruck Performance is the tri motor. We don't know that. There hasn't been confirmation on which variants are being released at launch. However, we have seen. Sorry, I'm going to plug in my MacBook here so I can get power from the Tesla. There you go. Live stream powered by Tesla. Um, what was I saying? We've seen one leaked photo of the Cybertruck interior, not like the interior cabin, but like the parts and the wires and stuff. Under the hood, there was this shot with the little badge that said dual motor variant. So we know that at least one of the prototypes is the dual motor. In my opinion, it's very likely that the launch edition will be the dual motor, um, because you can get a ton of great performance out of that. And it probably saves time, saves money by just having two motors instead of three, improves your efficiency, which improves your range. So I just think dual motor is going to be what most vehicles are in the future. If you care about all-wheel drive, if you're not that interested in, or you don't live in a place where it gets cold or icy and you need traction control or go off-roading, if you just want a cheap, efficient commuter, I think single motors will still be great. Like, I've loved owning the single motor Tesla. The rear-wheel drive Model Y, in my opinion, is the best one you can buy, and I bet a lot of people will buy it. So I just think for people on a budget, rear wheel drive makes sense. And for people who want all wheel drive, dual motor will make sense. And for people with more money than sense, the tri motor and quad motor will make sense. Um, let's see. Ram Rev is supposed to get a 220 kilowatt hour pack to reach 500 miles. That's actually not bad. I did a video on that when it was announced, and a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, Ram's crazy for putting that big a battery pack to get 500 miles." I was like, "You guys know if the Cybertruck wants 500 miles, it's probably going to be like 200 kilowatt hours, right?" Like, sure, maybe it's a little bit smaller of a battery pack than the Ram, but not by much. If you just look at energy consumption per mile of the Ram, which, yeah, Mike said 229. Um, So we do 500-mile range divided by 229 kilo. That's still getting over 2 miles per kilowatt hour on a truck with an over 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's not bad considering, like, the Ford F-150 Lightning that gets a little over 2 miles per kilowatt hour now. Most Rivians on the road get about 2 miles per kilowatt hour. So Ram, if their numbers are correct, which maybe they're exaggerating, maybe it's not as good as they claim, but assuming the number is correct, if they're able to match that efficiency of today's pickup trucks and yet extend the range by like 200 miles, that's amazing. That's really good. That's honestly really impressive. Like, if they could get it, if they could keep the efficiency the same as today's trucks, but just add in an additional 100 kilowatt hours to the pack, that's a lot of additional weight. So if they actually hit those numbers, I'm impressed. They got to deliver. They got to make it and prove it, just like so many companies do. But I hope their numbers are correct. I would assume they are. They're an established brand. They've made millions of trucks and delivered for decades now. So I don't think they're lying, personally. I believe them. Um, Cybertruck performance is the Oh, sorry, I answered that. We don't know. It could be. Interesting, though, in my opinion, that when Elon Musk was testing Cybertrucks recently, he said he test drove the Cybertruck performance. Usually they don't use that terminology unless it's a dual motor. Like you say, Tesla says Model 3 performance, Model Y performance. But with the tri-motor systems, you usually say the Model S plaid or the Model X plaid. And in the past, he said, yeah, Cybertruck plaid, in tweets from like 2019, 2020. But most recently, he said Cybertruck performance. I'm not saying that confirms anything. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting to use that terminology because usually you only say performance if it's a dual motor. Um, let's see, capital P or lowercase p? I don't even remember. I think it was uppercase. But typically, I don't hear them say performance Model S anymore. In the past few years, they've always said the Plaid Model S or the Plaid Model X, and I haven't heard them say Plaid Cybertruck in a while, which makes me think it's probably not the tri motor. But I'd love to be wrong. I hope it's the tri motor. I hope it has 500-mile range and costs 70 grand or whatever. That would all be great, but I'm just not getting my hopes up because based on Tesla's previous behavior, they typically don't act that way. I'm curious about the rumor of the Model 3 performance with plaid motors. Yeah, I don't visualize that. If you've just seen the plaid powertrain, you know how big it is. And they had to make the Model S wider to accommodate for that tri-motor system. And the Model 3 is definitely not as wide as the plaid. So, um what I heard through, I forget who said it. It wasn't an exclusive thing, but someone said the rumor was that there will be, of course, a Model 3 performance upgrade, but it's not going to be a tri motor. It's just they're going to upgrade the dual motors. They're going to put the front motor of the plaid Model S into the front of the Model 3. So it's not getting three motors, but it could get upgraded horsepower and stuff, which is, if you're into that kind of thing, congratulations, but I'm not. I'm like, why are we wasting time on this? Like EVs are already crazy fast. Are we really going to put all this extra money and resources into shaving off another zero point 0.2 seconds of the 0 to 60? Someone might be happy about that, but to me I'm like, okay. We already got crazy fast. Um I think what's going to make a bigger difference towards electrification is cheaper, lower cost. I don't think it's advertising. I don't think it's performance. I think it's affordability. That's what I hope Tesla's focusing most on, and it appears they're making great progress in that way with the new Model Y rear-wheel drive. It looks to be the cheapest Model Y ever announced once you factor in incentives, and still has a great battery pack, probably a great charging curve, still has a great suite of features that comes with it. So I'm all in favor of stuff like that. I'm not the performance guy. I'm sorry. There's other channels that'll probably rant with you all day about how much better the performance could be or should be, whereas I'm just like, it's let the Porsche companies fuss with that. Let the Navara fuss around with extreme performance because there's not a ton of people buying these cars for that, and taking them to the track and stuff. It's like that's more just for like YouTube content. It's not like functional. It's not actually increasing sales all that much, in my opinion. It's like, oh, they shaved 2.2 seconds off the 0 to 60. Okay, I'll buy one now. At least that's not how I think. Plaid performance on a massive truck sounds low key scary. I mean, Tesla semis are already driving around with the same powertrain, which is pretty nutty. Yeah, what about that performance robo taxi? You just get in this little cabin and you plug in the destination and then it just drives you as fast as it can to the destination. The point of Model 3 with plaid motors is to disrupt the Model S plaid, not prove EVs are fast. Why do you need to disrupt the Model S plaid? Isn't that bad? Wouldn't they rather you spend more money on the plaid than convince you not to buy the plaid? If anything, the way I feel is if they did a plaid Model 3, they would probably kill the Model S. Model S has very few advantages going for it at this point, especially if the Highland Model 3 comes to the US, which it is probably going to, um, there's going to be less and less reasons to get the Model S, and the demand for it is already not that great. That's why they've had to lower prices on it so much. So I don't think they can lower it much further. And if they come up with more reasons for you not to buy it, then they'll just probably kill it off. I think sodium ion emerging and freeing up all the LFP currently going into the storage market will be the catalyst for the under $30,000 EV. Um, yeah, I'm curious about sodium ion. I keep hearing talk about it, but at least in the US it's not that common yet. I don't I'm sure it's cheaper than LFP, but I think the lower cycle life will probably deter a lot of companies from going with it. I still think LFP is underrated. Like, not enough companies are using that in their vehicles. Ford is like just now starting to use it in their electric cars. Tesla's been using it for a while, and in the US, they just now expanded it to the Model Y. Took way too long, in my opinion. They should have put it in the Model Y years ago. And sodium ion is cheaper, but it's more it degrades faster than the iron based, which I think for a car more people might care about, for long term ownership. Um, there's a lot of promising news coming out about sodium ion, but it's for those who don't know, it's basically like cheaper than LFP, which is already like the cheapest automotive grade battery pack. And the only downside is right now, I mean, it's not very energy dense, similar to LFP, but that's not a big deal for cheaper cars with one motor. But the bigger problem is the cycle life is not very good. Like the cycle life of sodium, in most testing is proven to be worse than nickel, manganese, cobalt, or the 2170 cells that Tesla uses. So you get lower energy density, lower cycle life, lower price. And the debate probably going on with Tesla and many other EV makers is, are those trade offs worth it? Do we make a battery that doesn't last as long, that's lower cost? For some people, it might be worth it. I don't know exactly how massive the price drop is and availability, but as far as I can tell, the lithium is not that big a problem. It's more of a lithium refining issue. It's not that there isn't enough lithium, it's that there's not enough refineries that are processing lithium to be automotive grade. And Tesla's working on that with their new lithium refinery in Texas. So hopefully they can address that. But from what I've gathered, from what Tesla has told us, it's more of a refining problem than it is a mining problem. And I trust them because they use more batteries than anybody. Um, Converting Fremont factory to a 3Y and robotaxi factory would be an interesting move. It sounds kind of like something Tesla would do because I mean they did the big Model S and X refresh, and that definitely made them feel more up to date and modern, and it increased the demand for a long time, and a lot of people were buying them. But now we're kind of back to where we started with the prices coming back down and Tesla trying to convince more people to buy them. But everyone's just going, yeah, but the Model 3 and Y, they're just so much cheaper and they're 90% the same experience. So I'll just buy a Model 3 and Y. And now Tesla's making the Model 3 and Y even better, which makes the Model S and X even harder to justify. So knowing how Tesla is always, best part is no part, best process is no process, you know, they killed their first car shortly after starting it. I guess we should be grateful that they kept the Model S and X around for so long. Um, the Roadster didn't even make it to 2012. They made the Roadster for like 3 years. And I'm not saying they were wrong to cancel it. Like, it made a lot of sense to get rid of it. It was very problematic. And Elon said on numerous occasions that it was a big headache to try to retrofit their design with the Lotus design. And he said from the beginning, we would have been way better off just designing a whole new car from scratch than trying to retrofit an existing car. So they learned a lot from it, but it didn't make sense to keep making it. So maybe they'll feel similarly about the Model S and X. Maybe they'll feel like, yeah, these were cool and they were high margin for a time, but now they're not as high in demand and we can't justify them at this point. So let's just shut it down, focus more on high volume cars. Yeah, I think Oof Dad's right. The Cybertruck will probably eat into sales of the S and X a bit because it is kind of the higher end, higher price, more capable, a bit more luxury focused vehicle. Um, Tony says, I think the Model S is fine, axing the Model X and replacing it with something more the size of an R1S, but with regular doors that aren't expensive. Makes sense. Yeah, maybe doing a more full size SUV, but there's just been so little talk about it. Tesla really doesn't like diversifying their lineup. Anytime people bring up those kinds of things to Elon, he's always like, that's not the real problem. What truly matters is autonomy at scale, 100 robotaxis all over the world, and we need to find out the lowest cost per mile of ownership. He's so obsessed with, we're not going to need all these cars because we're going to switch to robotaxis next year, that I don't think much of their attention is on, oh, we need to make a bigger SUV because the Model Y is already selling, better than everybody else. So they feel like, okay, we got it. We covered the CUV market. Even though I know it's not a full size SUV and it's nothing close to what the R1S is or a Chevy Suburban is or whatever, but it's just, I don't think that's Tesla's battle. Like, that's not the kind of thing they're going to go after. I think they'll leave that to the competition. They'll let GM handle that, or Rivian handle that, or Lucid, if they're still around, can handle that. I think they're going to let the competition make the bigger, more inefficient vehicles with weaker margins so that Tesla can focus on higher volume, thicker margin markets. Do I think repairability is going to be an issue for Cybertruck accidents? Yeah, just because it's a new vehicle, I think insurance will probably be kind of confused on what to do about it. And the new steel exoskeleton, that's not exactly an exoskeleton, whatever, is probably going to be a bit complicated to work on at first because the technicians don't have much experience with it. And there's a lot of, Tesla and Rivian like having one part that can kind of do many things at once. So that's caused a lot of issues though for repairability. Like Rivian has, where's a picture of a Rivian? I can bring it up. Let me just go to the visualizer. Um, they keep getting rid of the visualizer on this thing. Drives me nuts. I don't want to reserve a custom build. Just show me a side picture. Okay, this is the closest thing we're gonna get. So on a Rivian, you have one body panel here that goes all the way to the back, touching the tailgate over here. And that same piece goes all the way to here, over here, and back here. So what's happened with the Rivian in accidents, very common accident, is you get rear-ended. Um, this happened to Rich Rebuilds Rivian. Someone in his car backed it up and damaged the back end, which meant not only is the back end and tailgate damaged, so the tailgate needs service, but now this piece, which goes all the way out here, needs to be replaced. And there's all kinds of wiring and of course color matching, and that ties into the gear tunnel pieces here and everything. So this tiny little fender bender can turn into a, okay, we basically need to replace the entire side of the vehicle, which is not simple. Um, that that causes problems. And the Cybertruck, let me look up sighting. If we get a side profile here, um, I think might have a similar design issue. Well, there's a seam there, so maybe they could replace just the back half without touching the roof. But still, I think there's a lot of internal electronics and stuff mounted in here. Luckily, the Cybertruck is all steel and probably much more durable, so it's kind of a yes no answer. It's like in certain accidents where you damage the steel, it will probably be fairly expensive to repair because it's not something you can just kind of punch out like usual. But I also think that the likelihood of there being dents and scratches are far lower now because of how strong the exterior is. So with that additional durability, minor fender benders or light, door openings, there's no paint scratching to worry about, which is often a big reason people might go in for service, is that things got scuffed up. Or if someone sideswipes you a little bit or lightly taps into the truck, What might cause a bunch of dents and scratches on a regular truck might not cause much of anything on the Cybertruck. So there might be less accidents or less noticeable damage than a normal pickup truck, but there's still plastic pieces that could get damaged just like any other truck, and there's still steel's not indestructible. It's certainly going to be stronger than a typical truck, but it's still not like infinitely durable. Um, Ultimately, the ideal case is Fremont factory shuts down for a year for some restructuring, but they're already dealing with the convoluted machine it is with four unique vehicles, so not much excuse. Yeah, I think they're just going to lose so much money if they shut it down for that long. Um, because, yeah, they've got other factories now, but Fremont is still relatively productive. They're cranking out, like, what, 600,000 vehicles a year from that factory. So to shut it down for a year, they would lose out on a ton of revenue. Um, let's see. My 4K Jenny will only get about 6 kilowatt hours per gallon of gas. I was guessing about 30% efficiency, theoretical, but it's far less. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Ultimately, the ideal case is. Oh, I read that. Tony says thoughts on a three-wheel slash Aptera style robotaxi. In my opinion, tires will be the biggest cost of robotaxi long term. Unlike other EV components, tires won't benefit from future economies of scale slash Wright's law. Well, thank you so much for asking. Whoa, I got the thumbs down. Forgot the reactions are on. Someone asked about Aptera. Woo! We can talk Aptera now. Yes. That's wonderful. So, obviously, love the Aptera. I love three-wheeled auto cycle design, enclosed auto cycle. Uh, and for a robotaxi, yes, I think I did a video on that in the past, but it's basically how if I don't think robotaxis are ever going to be level 5. I think regulation is going to prevent it from going mainstream more than anything. Um, But assuming I'm wrong on that, and for the sake of the example, we just say, okay, yes, we are going to figure out level 5 autonomous driving by the end of this year, next year, who cares? If it becomes available, then you're right. It is going to be a question of how cheap can we get the cost, because the most expensive thing in a taxi right now is the driver. You got to pay that driver for his time. That's that's why Uber and Lyft cost what they cost, and a regular taxi service costs what it talks. Costs what it costs. So you get rid of that driver, the cost per mile drops substantially because you've just made a vehicle that is now able to drive wherever you want it to drive without a person. So okay, you just saved a ton of money. Now, to be more cost competitive, what comes next? Yeah, things like maintenance. I think maybe things like tires, but still, I think charging it is also going to be a big factor. Even for a small efficient vehicle, the electricity isn't going to be free, regardless of who owns it. Tesla can cover it with the supercharging and probably give themselves a lower rate, but they still got to pay some provider for that electricity, or they got to put in solar panels, which is a bigger upfront investment for a long-term lower price, but it's still an investment. Um, so yeah, in the world of robotaxis, the cyber car that we saw in Franz's book actually makes a lot of sense to me. Um, I think it was called Taxi Robo in the book. Where did that picture? Yeah, this thing. I love this design. I fell in love with it the second I saw it, and the only thing I kept wishing was, "Oh God, please Tesla, can you sell that? I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to just ride around in it. I want to own a car like that. I haven't reserved any other EV than an Aptera. I like the idea of an efficient, affordable two-seater because there are so many drives I do where it's just me or just me and one other person, and all the other drives that I'm doing in my Model 3, maybe because I've turned into an efficiency nut, I'm now just like, oh man, I don't need all this extra space in the back, that whole second row, and that whole fourth wheel I'm pulling around with me using more energy for no reason. I'm wearing out that tire. It's going to cost more money to replace 4 tires than it is 3. I've got more weight on the road. I'm wearing out the road faster. And I love the concept of designing. What did this do? It's very Blade Runner esque. Um, but yeah, while I understand this vehicle couldn't replace all cars on the road, some people want to have more seats. Sometimes there's more people in the car. But if you look up average car occupancy US, the answer is about 1.5. So on average, most cars have about 1 to 2 people in them, which, sure, in a robotaxi future, if you wanted to move more than 2 people, you would just say that in the robotaxi app. You would say, I need a car to pick me up and I need it to have 7 seats. And then a Model X would show up and then you'd fill up the car. But for the vast majority of driving, which is probably one person commuting or 2 people driving to a grocery store or 2 friends going out to lunch, you would want the most efficient small vehicle possible because that's going to use way less energy. It'll be way cheaper to build the vehicle, way cheaper to maintain the vehicle, and that's how you get the lowest cost per mile of transport. So in a robotaxi future, a design kind of reminiscent of an Aptera, super aerodynamic, not a ton of seats, but 3 wheels and teardrop style shape. Yeah, that would honestly make a ton of sense in my head. So I'm just like I'm in love with efficiency. I just want a super cheap 3 wheeler that has 2 or 3 seats in it. Like I think that would be super cool, especially if you could charge it via solar and maybe start getting into the 6 to 7 miles per kilowatt hour range. That would be amazing. Um, and for the longest time we've been talking about Tesla's next generation vehicle platform, right? Like, what are they going to do for the next generation? It's supposed to be $25,000, or maybe it's even less than that. But in my head, I kept thinking, okay, how are they going to do a $25,000 car that doesn't kill off all the other vehicles? Because everyone just says, oh, it's a compact car, and I'm like, well, compact cars are not inherently that much more efficient or aerodynamic than a sedan like the Model 3. If you wanted to do a 5 seater, the Model 3 is basically the most compact, efficient way to do that. If you get any shorter, you're actually taking more of a hit on your aerodynamics, which eats into your range and stuff. So rather than Tesla make their own version of like a Chevy Bolt, I would much rather Tesla make uh if they're going to do a compact, smaller vehicle that doesn't eat into the sales of the Model 3, I would much prefer them do a lower seater, like two-seater, 3 seater with 2 doors, 3 or 4 wheels, but whatever the wheel arrangement is, it's just more teardrop shaped where you have two in the front and then kind of a more centrally located wheel in the back or 2 wheels in the back that are near the middle to maximize on aerodynamics. And now it's like, okay, you have a cheaper car that wouldn't kill Model 3 sales because it's kind of a new segment, the auto cycle segment, which Aptera seems very interested in. I think is a new market. Like I don't think we can base previous buying behavior on this because electric vehicles just fundamentally work differently, Like in the gas vehicle age, it didn't make a lot of sense to make a bunch of 2 seaters with 2 doors because it wasn't that much cheaper. There wasn't that many advantages compared to just making a small 5 seater with 4 doors. Whereas with electric vehicles, there's a lot of cost savings and a lot of advantages to making it smaller just with 2 or 3 seats. And then you can use a smaller battery pack. If you can make it super aerodynamic, super lightweight, then you don't need as much energy to go the same amount of distance. So you could still have a pretty decent range with like a 40 or 35 kilowatt hour battery pack instead of 50, especially if that battery pack's lithium iron phosphate. Now it's going to be even way cheaper to build than a Model 3 rear wheel drive. And sure, it's not going to be the last car you ever buy because it can't sit as many people as a sedan, but I think Tesla would be okay with that. So I love that idea. I just hope they sell it to people. I would hate if they just made it strictly for robotaxi access because that means I'll probably never get to use it. Um, but thank you for asking about that. Rivians have quite a few annoying design flaws. Jury rig everything showed how there's a spot under the bed where dirt and debris can fall into and you can't get it out. And there was a plant growing in there. Yeah, I saw his video on that. I think I don't think the Cybertruck's gonna be flawless either, for the record. I think once deliveries start, we'll probably like, especially that rolling vault door. I feel like there's definitely got to be a way that debris and stuff gets stuck in there, and people are going to get annoyed on how hard it is to service. because Tesla is Tesla, and Tesla is not a right to repair kind of company. Um, Tony Saba's solar sun power thesis points towards electricity getting cheaper and cheaper over time, which leaves tires, and that dude's been right a lot. Yeah, I want it to get cheaper and cheaper. Don't get me wrong, and I see where he's coming from, but the grid does not get cheaper to maintain. Maybe where the energy is supplied from, but the grid, if anything, is getting more expensive to maintain, especially where I live because wildfires are such a problem. PG&E and all the utility companies are spending big bucks on moving high voltage wiring to underground instead of above ground so that when there's outages or windstorms, there's less likely to be a fire. So that whole process and maintaining the grid, I don't think that cost is going to go away. And I've heard the thesis on why electricity will get cheaper and cheaper, but I just got to tell you, in a lot of areas, it ain't happening. It's getting more expensive in many areas. So I'll believe it more when we start. And a lot of these areas are very renewable. Like San Diego is what I'm thinking of because I have family there and they bought solar and all their neighbors have solar and yet their electricity bills are still going up. So I get the whole thesis of an energy production getting cheaper, but grid maintenance, which unfortunately is difficult to avoid because you can't force every household to have a power source. You can, some people can afford power walls, but you can't. Power walls don't make as much sense with apartment buildings. Solar doesn't work as well with a big apartment buildings because you don't have that much surface area for the solar, and you've got a lot of energy being consumed because everybody's densely packed together. Um, so, in some ways, I think it will get cheaper, yes, but in other ways, I think it'll get more expensive. Anyway, I think it would make a lot of sense to just put solar on the car, which is what Aptera did. If you make the vehicle efficient enough, um, you can you can make that feasible. And imagine if you barely had to plug the thing in because it just charges all day sitting around. Uh, let's see. In a mature robotaxi future, the Aptera style vehicle will be for long distance and in low, mid density areas. Really high density localities might enforce robo van pools or limit street congestion. Oh, I hate how much sense you're making right now, Tony. That's very true. But yes, if you're in a city, you've probably heard it before, but public transportation is technically like the most efficient way to transport yourself. But there's a caveat with that. It's assuming that the public transport is running at max capacity. So, yes, a bus is still going to be more efficient. Even a gas bus probably is going to be more efficient at transporting you than an electric car. But that's if every seat on the bus is occupied, or at least a high number of seats on the bus. If the bus is only moving one or two people because it's at a low population time or it's not a heavy traffic time, then in that case you're moving around a much larger vehicle with a much bigger engine and you're not transporting that many more people, which is why I think maximum efficiency wise, robotaxi would still beat out public transport because it can scale accordingly. The subway that has to run around the clock for everybody, there's certain times a day where it's fully packed and it's very efficient because you're moving hundreds of people at a time. But in other parts of the day where there's less traffic and it's less busy, you're only moving 4 or 5 people, but you're got a much larger mass that requires all this extra energy and you're pushing all this air out of the way. So the difference is with robotaxis, if there's not much demand, you don't have to move very much mass. If there's only, at midnight, there's maybe 15, 20 people that need some rides around town, then only a couple of robotaxis can be active and the other robotaxis don't have to waste energy. They can just sit there. Whereas if a bus wants to be operational late into the evening hours, it's got to be driving around with a couple people on board or maybe nobody on board while it gets to the bus stop. Whereas robotaxis can just stop when they need to and they can add more as needed. Um, when are they going to announce the vehicle that they've been teasing? They said they would announce it this year, did they? I wouldn't focus too much on what they said years ago because Tesla changes their plans constantly. They're always fluctuating on oh, you know what? Actually, let's talk about that later. But yeah, the next generation vehicle platform is what they were referring to on Battery Day. In Battery Day, they said that it would take 3-ish years. Emphasis on the ish because like classic Elon, nothing really comes out on time. The Model Y was the exception, not the rule. Cybertruck is late. The Semi was late. The Roadster is late. Robotaxis are late. Pretty much everything regarding Elon is late. Um, that's what Elon is famous for, turning the impossible into late. So just try to remember that. In the same way, they're still working on it, but we don't know what it looks like. We don't even at Investor Day earlier this year. I remember I was reacting to it in this car. Um, they talk. I thought that was a terrible event. It was literally just the exact same thing as the annual shareholder meeting, except they try to hype up this next generation car without talking about it. It was just like the next car is going to be great. It's going to have in-house design controllers. It's going to have a high voltage architecture. It's going to be so much better than our current cars, and we're going to manufacture it with this new unboxed process. And then they were like, "Questions? Does anyone have questions?" And everyone's like, "What? What's it look like?" And they're like, "No, no, we can't talk about that. Don't ask questions. Don't ask about that." Okay, any questions? And I thought one of the investors had a very reasonable question. He was just like, "Okay, if we can't ask what it looks like or any specs or features about it, the guy in the audience was just like, when are you going to unveil the next generation vehicle? And they didn't even want to answer that. The guy was like, okay, when are we going to find out all of the answers to the questions we have? And Elon was like, we can't talk about that. So they didn't even give us a timeline at Investor Day. So I don't know. Investor Day felt like a boardroom decision. It was not like I know Tesla doesn't have a PR department. Because if they had a PR department, they probably wouldn't have done Investor Day. Because, in my opinion, it did not serve a purpose. It did not help anything. The stock didn't do better after Investor Day. Didn't change anyone's minds. It didn't convince anyone of anything. The big Tesla fanboys loved it, and they were going to love Tesla if they had an Investor Day or not. And the Tesla critics continued to hate Tesla afterwards. It was just a big waste of time, in my opinion. Um, let's see. Where do you think robotaxi will be used? I think big cities are a bad idea, mainly due to vandalism. It is everywhere in big cities. Well, that's a bigger problem, I think, with robotaxis. But I think robotaxis make the most amount of sense in big cities because usually in bigger cities, car ownership is more expensive because of how difficult it is to park in places, and insurance tends to cost more. And usually you don't have to drive very far in bigger cities because things are closer together. So you don't need as much range and you can use a smaller battery pack and etc. But in more rural, widespread areas, I don't think it's that great either because regulatory approval is a lot harder for larger areas. There are level 4 robo taxis right now, like Cruise and Waymo, but they're always in cities. They're locked to where a city has approved them to operate, which I'm confused why Tesla people just assume that with Tesla's robotaxis, they're just going to send out a line of code and suddenly robotaxis are going to be all over the world. It's like they don't have permission to do that. That maybe they'd have permission in Chandler, Arizona and San Francisco, but that is not the whole country. You have to get written permission from the Department of Motor Vehicles in each individual state. We don't even have Tesla insurance in every state, let alone robotaxi access, and that's on a like per county basis. So even if the code was flawless, which it is not, for the record, the Tesla full self driving code still makes mistakes all the time. I watch videos on it as much as I can from Chris from Dirty Tesla and AI Driver and Whole Mars Catalog. I watch videos of it, and it's not perfect. It's good, but it's not perfect. But again, even if it was safer than a human or whatever, like safer than a human without supervision, we should add. It is FSD beta with human supervision is safer than the average human, but we don't have data on how it performs without human supervision, which is a whole different story. Because of course, how's the car going to drive when it knows that it can't ask for help at any time? It might perform very differently. Right now, we see FSD beta do some amazing things, but I think it's very confident because they know that a human has to be paying attention and a human's in the car and has to take over if it does something wrong. The human is still responsible. If Tesla was responsible and there wasn't a human to take over at any time, the code might perform very differently. They just tease us and then don't want to talk about it. Exactly. It was very frustrating for me because I was like, why do you want to talk about it and not talk about it at the same time? Just my phone's about to die. So I'm just gonna plug it in because I want to keep talking about this. I'm enjoying this conversation. Thank you for asking. Um, so if I were to guess the next generation vehicle platform, because Giga Mexico has proven to be more complicated than we thought to get construction started, I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon. I'm pretty sure all of Tesla's men and all the Tesla's horses are all working on the Cybertruck ramp right now. I think that's their main focus. And then after that, who knows? Maybe expanding Giga Berlin is going to be a big point of focus, and Giga Shanghai is expanding, and of course the Highland Model 3, getting that up and running at Fremont. There's a lot of things on the drawing board, and I don't think the next generation vehicle platform they feel that rushed to get to, because the robotaxi code isn't ready yet. So let's see. A gas to electric fuel cell can yield up to 60% efficiency. You could get 100 kilowatt hours on 5 gallons of gas, much smaller than a 100 kilowatt hour pack. Well, then why doesn't someone do it? My guess is it's more expensive in some way. Otherwise, more people would be offering that. Um, let's see. Robotaxis is a non-starter to me because it's basically asking permission for someone to use their car, and people are idiots. Why invite idiots into your car? Well, yeah, there's two different things. There's turning your car into a robotaxi, and then Tesla designing a vehicle from the ground up to be a robotaxi. Like these vehicles we were looking at earlier, Tesla would not sell this. It would make no sense to sell this because, for one, the NHTSA doesn't even let you sell a vehicle without side view mirrors, so they're definitely not going to let you sell a vehicle without a steering wheel. You can't buy a vehicle without a steering wheel in the United States, but there are robo taxis in certain cities. Um, the difference is you ride in them. You can pay for a ride, and it will take you where you want to go, and then it drops you off. So if Tesla was designing a robo taxi vehicle, you wouldn't be able to buy it. It would just be in certain cities where the robotaxis are legal, and then you would download an app and hail it, and it would show up and pick you up, and then you would go on your way. Um, and that, yes, I agree. If it's a public access vehicle, it's not going to be treated very well. It's always going to be left as worst as the worst person who was in it, because someone who isn't a mess and who is clean and doesn't make a mess, they're gonna you're not gonna know they were in the car. They're just gonna sit in it and ride and then get out. But if someone leaves a mess, the next person's gonna experience it, and then the person after that's gonna experience it. So whoever leaves the biggest mess is going to be remembered in those vehicles. And yeah, personally, I feel like even if robotaxis did exist, it wouldn't kill people's desire to own their own vehicle, because people use vehicles for more than just transportation. It's more than just moving from point A to point B. Um, Overnight robotaxi displacing short haul flights, San Diego to San Francisco, is a great use. Again, that's assuming they have regulatory approval to operate on roads that far away. Because right now legally they can't do that, even if the code existed. My experience with FSD beta on long road trips tells me we're much closer to a feature complete for that than urban robotaxi. I get what you're saying, because the highway driving is like computationally fairly simple. Like the car just stays between the lines and takes the exits when it needs to, whereas inner city driving gets a lot more technical, with the turns being weird and the road markings and all that stuff being all over the place. So, but you can't. The problem is you kind of have to do inner city driving if you want to go to the airport. You kind of have to do everything in between, and people around the airport need rides, so you have to drive to their house, which is going to require intercitting. So it doesn't really work. Like, you can't partially roll out robotaxi. You kind of have to go all in with it. um Otherwise it's just a rental car service. You can rent a Tesla and drive it, and the Tesla can also drive you if you'd like. But um Uber slash Lyft go bankrupt, or does Tesla sell to them? That will be up to Uber and Lyft. I think Uber is working on their own self-driving cars too. But yeah, if Tesla was selling fleet robo taxis to people, then I'm sure Uber would buy a bunch of them. But I think the biggest limiting factor preventing robo taxis, I mean, right now it's getting the code safe enough, which has been a problem for years. But even once the code is safe enough, I think regulatory approval is going to be a much bigger headache than people make it out to be. Some people might buy cars in the future for a place to sit while they live stream X and YouTube, I suppose. But I just mean people buy cars not for the lowest cost of transportation possible. People buy cars for fun. People buy cars for cargo space. The best selling vehicles in the US are not the most efficient, they're not the cheapest. The best selling vehicles here are F 150s and Toyota RAV4s. if all people cared about was lowest cost of transportation, they would all be buying Camrys and Civics or Model 3s. Um, the reason the best sellers are SUVs and pickup trucks is because people use them for more than just moving themselves around. They want to move stuff around. They want to have roof racks and bikes and surfboards, or go camping, or tow trailers around, or people want to have more storage space, or people buy certain cars that prioritize certain things like better colors, better materials, better trunk space, or better software, better charging, better, all kinds of things that attract people to certain vehicles. And I don't think that would all just suddenly go away if you could take a very cheap robotaxi somewhere. I mean, it's cool that it would exist. I'm sure a lot of people would use them, but I don't think it would kill off the need for car ownership, or the desire for car ownership, I should say. Um, Robo van pools is also a non-starter. Then you'd have to deal with the public. It won't be as fast, but you still deal with all the idiots using it. Road public trans for years, not going back. No, I feel exactly the way you do. It's great for people who are on a budget and have no other choice. Like if you're living in a big expensive city and all your money is going towards rent, and you can't afford a car and insurance and charging and all that complication, then public transport can be a great solution, but it's still not as convenient as owning your own car, because you got to put up with other people. You don't have as much privacy. You don't get to choose the music that's playing. You don't get to select the HVAC system settings you like. You don't get a seat as comfortable as you'd like. And of course, it's a publicly accessed vehicle, so it would probably be messy or stinky, or um, not as good as owning something that, that's yours. You're the only one who uses it. You take good care of it. You clean it. Um, I think people, especially Elon at Tesla, is oversimplifying the reason people buy cars. Like, why do you think so many people want the Cybertruck, Elon? A bunch of people don't want to buy the Cybertruck just so they can drive to work and back. Like people are excited for the Cybertruck so they can do off-roading, so they can do towing, so they can have more space, so they can fit more stuff and go further. People want the 500-mile range. They want that acceleration. All of these great attributes. They want the durability, the strong toughness of it. All of these dream, like great goals people have with the Cybertruck. None of them would really be replaced by a robotaxi. All a robotaxi would do is, oh, okay, it's a little cheaper for me to go from here to there. That's about it, though. It doesn't really change much outside of that. Um, let's see. In my opinion, FSD beta is level 4 ready on most interstates today. They'd need a foolproof method for waking you up before it exits freeway and do the work. Well, that would be level 3, to be fair. Level 3 means that the car can drive without your supervision, but you still have to be there. Level 4 implies that the driver is optional, um, which is why I struggle to understand. Like, well, on the highway it's level 4, but then when it leaves the highway it's level 3. It's like, no, that's just level 3, because there'd be no way to remove the driver what mid drive, right? Um, so I would be a lot more excited or curious about, or convinced that there's like more stuff coming when it comes to full self driving, if there was level 3 availability, but Tesla hasn't even touched that yet. And I feel like that's another big stage we have to get to before even level 5 is ready. Or yeah, people buy, like Ivan said, people want the Cybertruck because it looks cool. That's a lot of the reason people buy certain vehicles, is because they like the way they look. But if you're on a mega budget and your income's not very great, maybe you can't afford to have your own vehicle, then yes, robotaxis would be great for that. Public transport is great for that if it's available in your area. And I'm all in favor of offering public transport. There's not much I can do about it other than complain online to my city government. But if there's anything I've learned in my life, don't expect the government to do things right or efficiently or effectively. um, Government's the best way to do something slowly and poorly and miss the point on. So public transportation isn't something you can root for a company to do. You got to pay the government taxes regardless. So there's not much control we have over it. But with brands and companies selling products, you can buy the ones you like, and that encourages them to keep doing what they're doing. Giga budget. I think DMV approval will come at a price for FSD. When level 5 hits, they'll figure out how to tax it specifically, and then they will approve it. I think it will be much higher than road use tax. That's an interesting idea. Taxing the robo taxis. I mean, they're still vehicles. I think that you still need to pay like registration data on them. I think just Tesla would be paying for it. It would just be a question of how many miles are these things racking up. But I don't know. I feel like the government would want to incentivize robotaxi use because that means hopefully um, less vehicles on the road and less people have to buy their own vehicle. But if there's anything I know about DMV approval, it's not going to go quickly. There's only a handful of cities in the US that support driverless vehicles, and they're very geofenced. Not only are they geofenced, but they're usually time fenced. Like most of the robotaxis in San Francisco only work between certain hours, usually low traffic hours. It's like, oh yeah, it works at night between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. It can drive itself because there's not very many other people driving at that time. And they even had issues with that, which I'm sure is going to complicate the whole regulatory approval. I've heard the robo taxis have caused traffic jams and they've run over people or they've hit people. They've caused accidents or they've run into emergency vehicles. And it's not Tesla's fault. They're not Tesla robotaxis, but they're still going to affect all of the paperwork. And there's already been a huge movement of people protesting robotaxis now in the Bay Area, saying these things are causing problems, they're causing accidents, and they're hitting people. So we need to substantially limit how many robotaxis there can be. So even though it's not Tesla's fault, the public pushback from bad robotaxi attempts, Tesla's going to pay the price on. So for one, I don't think the code is ready. But even if the code was, because again, what's stopping Tesla from doing level 3? If the code is ready, why not say okay, you don't have to pay attention on freeways, or at least get rid of the nag, please. Seriously, Tesla. Autopilot would be so much more impressive if I didn't have to put my hand on the wheel. Let's just do eye tracking. Can Tesla be confident enough in autopilot that I don't have to keep my hands on the wheel and I can just they can just look at my eyes and make sure my eyes are looking at the road and that's good enough? But they won't even lose on that. They won't even budge on that. They still want your hand on the wheel the whole time. Um why would someone want to wrap a Cybertruck? Is it wrap only good for a few years? What would you put on it anyway? I've seen a lot of cool wrap designs, but yeah, it's customizable. It looks cool. Tony says there will be a period of 5 to 10 years where FSD is feature complete but not legal. Tickets for getting caught sleeping while robots driving will replace speeding tickets as motorists' biggest gripe. Uh, well, I guess it would depend, right? If it's level 3, yeah. I don't think. I think level 3 can have a lot of fine print attached to it. Like they can say, okay, you don't have to look at the road, but maybe that's why they haven't rolled out level 3 yet, is because it's so hard to regulate that. Like if someone, let's say, for example, you claim, Tony or whoever, that FSD right now is good enough for level 4 on highways or whatever. So let's just say when you're on the freeway, Tesla decides you don't have to pay attention. We remove all the nags. Your eyes don't have to be on the road and your hands don't have to be on the wheel. The car can do everything from then. Um, if you turn on autopilot, you're on the freeway. Okay, I don't have to pay attention. I pull out my phone and I'm using my phone and the car's doing all the driving. How does the highway patrolman know that I'm not breaking the law? You know, he probably won't. They got to send out notices to every police officer. Hey, by the way, if the Tesla has the full self-driving package and they're on the freeway, it's okay for them to be on the phone. Okay, that's probably not going to be a message that gets around very quickly, so wouldn't be shocked if a bunch of people get pulled over. Um, I'd be much more confident in Elon's word that it's nearly ready if they took away the nag or if people fall asleep or whatever. Why disengage it? If it's safer than a human, let it roll. Seriously. If it's safer than a human, why does a human have to supervise? I think personally, I'm not sold on the whole robotaxi thing. Actually, every time Elon promises it, I lose more faith in it because I'm like, oh man, he's really not budging. Like he is not adjusting his timeline. He is not realizing or acknowledging that he's been making the same promises all these years. So what's to stop him from doing it from another 6 to 7 years? So I'm less convinced on the whole robotaxi thing, but I do think that it's still worth pursuing. I don't think it's wrong for Tesla to try to make a car that can drive itself because there's all kinds of safety advantages for because humans aren't great at driving either. But I think if you get a human, humans are great at like the edge cases, like navigating a tricky parking lot, understanding construction zones, driveways that are poorly marked, all that kind of stuff a human is great at. But humans suck at driving when it comes to boring, repetitive, like just stay in this lane, stay between the lines, don't get distracted, look at the stoplight. Um, that's where humans usually cause accidents, is because they were distracted, they weren't looking both ways, stupid stuff. Humans get distracted, but we're good at figuring out context in little weird situations that is kind of the opposite with a computer. If you just tell the computer to drive, I feel confident right now that my car on the freeway could probably drive for hours and hours and keep it between the lines. It could just see those two lines on the road, maintain speed, not hit the car in front of it, and stay between. So, in my view, the safest form of driving around is going to be a human supervising a computer, because the computer is going to do great for those long stretches of nothing that get really boring, which is usually where the human falls asleep or gets distracted or doesn't look both ways. The boring, repetitive stuff, the computer's great at. The edge case, construction zone stuff, the human is great at. So the best case is where you have a human there to take over in those weird situations, and then a computer involved for all the boring, repetitive stuff. To me, that would be the ideal situation. Um, which is why I'm still in favor of them pursuing it. I just wish they would change the narrative about it. Just don't tell me that this is going to be level 5 at the end of the year, because we know that's not true. You've been saying it for years and it's still not true. So I'm more of like the keep pursuing this, keep trying to make it self-driving and try to make it as capable as possible. Chase that trail of nines. But, if you figure out level 5, then great. You can market your robo taxis and you can try to bring that to as many regions as possible. But my biggest issue with the whole thing is the narrative surrounding it. Like Elon's been saying, like robo taxis are basically here and we've got them all figured out now. There's just a few little bugs we need to figure out before we launch it. But he's been saying that for 7 years, and he keeps saying it's going to be ready, it's going to be ready, and it's not. So I just wish they would shift the narrative. Like, don't call it full self driving when it requires my hand on the wheel and my eyes on the road, because that's not self driving. That's full supervised driving, but not full self driving. Full self driving should mean I don't need to be there or I don't need to pay attention. Um, the nag should only be a thing when the car can't see if you're looking at the road, like if you have sunglasses on. I mean, a lot of people would probably wear sunglasses anyway. I mean, but fine, I would even take that. I would even take eye tracking with sunglasses off. Okay, if I don't want to touch the wheel, then I'll just squint a little bit more. But yeah, I'll keep my eyes on the road. If I could just sit there like this with my hands on my legs, I'm just picturing driving around like that. Honestly, it would probably still take a long time to get used to. I don't know. Something about being in a small vehicle moving 70 miles an hour and not having your hands on some kind of control. It'll take some getting used to. In a plane, even you feel a little more confident because there's like a pilot up there. I know it's not necessarily a sensible thought process. Like the pilot in the plane probably uses automated features all the time. Um, but like, there's a certain amount of comfort that comes with professionalism. Like when you get on the plane or you see the pilot, he's nicely dressed. He's got a suit and a hat on. Just he doesn't need that suit, doesn't serve a purpose or a function. All it really does is make people feel more comfortable that okay, he knows what he's doing. He's professional. People feel confident in flying this plane because he's got he's got a uniform on. Can you imagine if when you got on the plane you looked over and the guy was just in like shorts and a t-shirt with flip-flops? He was like, "Hey, I'm your pilot today." Everyone would be like, "Oh," you know, it'd get so much more nervous to just see some guy in the pilot's seat. Even though he could be a perfectly trained, adequate pilot, he could know everything about planes, and he could be better than another pilot with a uniform on. But there's just a certain level of confidence that comes with a professional-looking guy in the cockpit, and or gal, and with a Tesla or a car of any kind, I feel like it will be similar. Like you get in it, and if you get at highway speeds and you're going pretty fast, none of the robo taxis in San Francisco go on the highway, by the way. Um, like just going fast or taking those exits or going on the on ramp and stuff, and no one is in control, and you're just sitting there. Yeah, even if it was the best self-driving software in the world, which I truly believe it is, I still think that's going to make people uncomfortable. Normalize shorts for pilots. Yeah. Praying for the day where I can buy auto lane change. Seriously, I would spend all of my 20,000 credits right now, my referral credits, on auto lane change. Just to have autopilot, let me signal, and then it gets in the other lane, and then I signal and it gets back. That's all I want. I don't need navigate on autopilot. I don't need summon. I don't need auto park. Just the auto lane change. It's the one thing. Tesla, please, just let me have that. If Elon wants to increase FSD uptake, he needs to bring those advances to simple autopilot. Stretch of I-85 I frequent has a lot of construction, and autopilot craps the bed every time. Oh yeah, I still have a ton of situations where autopilot doesn't read the speed limit sign or doesn't understand that there's a new lane opening up, so it moves over and then it jerks back into position. Still makes classic mistakes. They haven't touched the autopilot code, I think, in years. Um, I don't know how that would increase the FSD take rate because it would just make the free version more enjoyable. But I do think they'll probably have to lower prices further if the FSD take rate doesn't improve. They're just gonna have to keep lowering the price until someone starts buying it. But I was really happy and encouraged to finally see the full self-driving price comes down because I never thought that would happen. For the longest time, Elon just kept saying, "No, it's going to keep going up, and you want to buy it now so you can lock it in because every year it's going to get more and more expensive the more capable it gets." And he said that, and then it went from 15 grand to 12 grand, and I was like, "Yes, people don't buy your bull crap forever. Now you have to lower it to justify it." So I hope no one bought it after the price cut so that Tesla realizes, oh crap, this is kind of a either you got to lower the price or you got to rethink the pricing strategy. Like I think it would be cool to turn it into kind of a supercharging thing where you pay for it by the mile, where okay, now your car can drive you where you want to go, but it'll charge you by how often you use it. So you plug in a destination, you turn on autopilot, and then there's a little option that says, swipe to let the car finish the drive for you. And when you swipe it, it activates all the full self driving features, and then it bills you on a per mile basis instead of on a per month basis or a $12,000 up front. It would increase the take rate, assuming FSD software is better, would give people like me more confidence to buy FSD. Yeah, that's true. Like if you're an EV enthusiast or an EV nerd, you know that the autopilot base code is nothing like the FSD beta software. That's a totally different software package. But if you're not a nerd who follows all the self-driving code and everything, then you just turn on autopilot, which hasn't been touched in years, and then it does something stupid on the freeway, and you go, "See, that was terrible. I don't trust this. I'm never going to pay for full self driving because it's going to try to kill me." I had a friend actually that borrowed a Tesla and tried autopilot, and it did something stupid, and I guess it put them in oncoming traffic, and he was like, "Okay, it tried to kill me. I'm never going to use it again." So I'm like, it doesn't take much. People are not very forgiving when it comes to driving safety. So if you just have one bad experience with autopilot, that could like permanently swear that person off from ever even trying it again for years, simply because it's their life, it's their safe, it's the safety of their themselves and their passengers. The people are going to take that seriously. So you got to give people some credit for being very skeptical of, people are not going to be that trustworthy or give autopilot that many chances. Um, let's see. It would increase. Yeah, sorry, I read that. But I've been. Oh my god, I can't believe how much time just flew by. I always enjoy these streams. You guys always bring up good questions and good opinions, but it's already been almost 3 hours. That's insane. Um, I feel like these always turn into full self-driving discussions. I enjoyed the Cybertruck talk. I hope we get some more information on it soon. Let me see if there was any last minute news before I wrap up here. Someone got uh ooh, convoy of R1S is leaving the Las Vegas Sphere. That's cool. They can drive around in the Rivians. Have you guys seen the Sphere? It's cool. Lucid spent $100 million on advertising. That's hilarious. And it didn't matter, right? Ooh, Tesla Semi Black Edition. Ooh. Oh, wait, is this an old picture? Might be an old one. You should use this for the upcoming part, Fast and the Furious. When was this picture posted? I don't recognize it. Maybe that's an old picture. Um, MKBHD will drive the semi eventually, I'm sure. Have you guys gotten that thing too? Rotate the animal in the direction of the hand. Oh, Sawyer Merritt tweeted, "What's the bigger issue for Tesla?" I would say affordability. Oh, other people are saying economic macro conditions. Well, that's kind of the same answer. Interest rates make the car less affordable, but that kind of goes awareness of pricing, production. Yeah, I don't think it's awareness of pricing personally. Lucid stock at an all-time low. Is it really? The changes they're making in the base architecture for FSD with all the neural nets has me really excited about future improvement rate. I wish I could be excited, but people said that exact same thing like 2 years ago, and it didn't really translate to anything. Well, they closed at $5.03. Their all-time low was under $5, but yeah, it's not looking good. Not good, Lucid. Got to rethink your strategy. Um, if it if like the improvements in the neural net training resulted in them getting rid of the nag, I would be more excited. But what it's turned into is just another update, another update. Still keep your hands on the wheels. Still keep your eyes on the road. Wow, it looks really good. There's a few edge cases where it's not great, but it still looks really good. And then 6 months go by. Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. It's really good, but there's still some edge cases. It's not done. And we've been doing that now for like 3, 4 years. And I'm kind of sick of the whole just, okay, either let's see it actually make a change in the way you use the car, or let's just not need to talk much about it. Um, loose. How's the watch? It's okay. A lot of the time I don't wear it. I stopped wearing my Apple Watch, but there was multiple instances where people were trying to get a hold of me and I was not available because I didn't have the watch on and I left my phone in the other room or away from me, and it was causing problems that I was not as accessible as I needed to be. So I put the watch back on when I'm working, basically, but if I'm around the people that I need to be in contact with, then I take it off. I don't. I'm in a hybrid zone. So you guys probably only see me with the watch on, but I'm still keeping it off a lot of the time. Um, yeah, the used Model 3s are an amazing price. We talked about that on the last EV podcast. Do I think we'll see a useful Optimus robot dog doing something at a factory before a plaid in a factory before a paid robotaxi ride? I do. I don't think Optimus is gonna. I don't know where I got dog robot doing. I guess it depends on how you define useful. I mean, we saw that one video last year where it's like moving things out of a box very slowly. It's kind of a spectrum of useful. Um, I don't think it will. Let's put it this way: I don't think it will replace any jobs before a robo taxi ride. I think a paid robotaxi ride is honestly not that complicated. Other companies have been doing that for years. Waymo has been doing it for years. Cruise has been doing it for years. You could do that now with existing Teslas. You could just put a Model 3 in a special suite of beta code, probably have a clear plastic so that the people can't grab the steering wheel and pedals or whatever. But you could just write some code, launch a app and just say, "Okay, there's a Model 3 robotaxi in the Bay Area and you can pay some because it's in beta that's cost a lot. It's $5 a mile, and then you just get in the car and it drives you 5 miles and you pay 25 bucks and you get out. It's probably capable of doing something really basic like that now. Um, but what I would dictate as the bot doing something useful is the Tesla bot actually replacing one of the roles at the factory. Right now, I think the Tesla bot is just kind of playing around, like they can come up with something for it to do for a demo, but I don't think there's anything the Tesla bot has done yet that is like, oh, we don't need this position anymore. Like this person's job is no longer necessary because, or this person's job is drastically changed. Like they don't have to do this specific task anymore because of the bot. Um, do I think Tesla will reveal specific Cybertruck specs at the delivery event? I don't think so. I think they'll be quiet about most of it, like the pricing, because Tesla changes pricing all the time, and the range. Hopefully, they give us specs. I really want specs, but after the semi event and the 4680 Model Y event, the two last Tesla delivery events have basically not given away any meaningful numbers. The past two delivery events they had did not include range or pricing. I do think they'll do an event where they talk about how great it is. They'll have all kinds of pictures and videos, and they'll say how great the suspension is, how fast the acceleration is, how good it is at off-roading, and with cold weather testing, hot weather testing, and they'll brag about the hardware for all the great cameras, and they'll hype it up and say all the amazing things about the steel and the durability and the bed and the frunk, and they'll hype it up and say all these great things about it, but I do think they'll probably not dive into the most interesting specs. Existing autonomous rideshare services are free right now. Nah, it's not what I've seen. I've seen many people have to pay for their robotaxis. Maybe it's changed. I don't know. But if Tesla did one, I doubt it would be free. They'd probably charge a lot for it. Anyway, we're just at the 3 hour mark, which I think is my time to sign off. Hopefully, got some exciting updates for you on more videos to come in the not too distant future. And yeah, Mike's still waiting on the Cyber Quad. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you guys for tuning in, asking great questions. Love the conversation. Love the fellowship. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye bye.